The end of the world had been loud. It was a cacophony of shattering earth, the sky-splitting roar of the Jubi, and the desperate, dying prayers of 80,000 shinobi. Naruto Uzumaki's last memory was steeped in the scent of iron and ozone. He remembered the heat of Kurama's chakra, usually a comforting hearth, but in those final moments, a raging sun burning through the last of their combined life force. He remembered Hinata's hand. It had been cold, so terribly cold against his palm as the light left her eyes, a casualty of a war that had demanded too much from those who had so much to give. Then there was the seal, a desperate, theoretical construct of the Uzumaki clan, fueled by the Sage of Six Paths' remaining essence and Kurama's absolute sacrifice. "Fix it, you stubborn brat," the fox had snarled, his voice a tectonic shift in Naruto's mind, "and tell my other self to stop being such a moody prick." Then came the white, not a blinding flash, but a slow, suffocating erasure of existence. Naruto's eyes snapped open. He didn't scream. A decade of frontline combat had beaten the instinct to make noise out of him. Instead, he rolled out of bed, a movement so fluid and predatory it belonged to a jonin, not a child, and hit the floor in a low crouch. His bare feet gripped the linoleum, his center of gravity perfectly balanced. His right hand instinctively clawed at his thigh, searching for the heavy canvas of a kunai pouch that had lived there for half his life. His fingers grasped only the fabric of his pajamas. Naruto froze. The air was wrong. It wasn't the stagnant, ash-choked breath of a dying battlefield. It was sweet. It smelled of laundry detergent, stale instant ramen, and the faint, earthy scent of Konoha's summer morning. He looked at his hands. They were tiny. The thick, rugged calluses he'd earned from years of wielding truth-seeker orbs and the heavy iron of the battlefield were gone. His skin was smooth, save for a few minor scrapes from a childhood he had already lived once. "No," he whispered. His voice was a shock. It was high, tinny, and lacked the gravelly resonance of the man who had led the Shinobi Alliance. He crawled to the cracked mirror hanging above the sink. The face staring back was a ghost. It was the face of the boy who had failed his graduation exam 3 times. Round cheeks, wild blonde hair, and those 3 whisker marks. But the eyes were the tragedy. They were cerulean pools of ancient weariness, carrying the weight of 1,000 funerals. "Stop staring at yourself, brat. It's making me dizzy." Naruto's heart nearly stopped. The voice was deep, a subterranean rumble that vibrated in the very marrow of his bones. It was Kurama, but it wasn't the fragmented, half-presence of the yin or yang halves. It was the whole. The great fox was a massive, pulsing sun in the center of his mindscape. "Kurama," Naruto thought, his mental voice trembling. You made it? Both halves." The seal was designed to preserve the soul, not just the chakra. The fox rumbled, shifting his massive weight behind the golden bars of the cage. "But look at your coils, Naruto. You're a gallon of water trying to fit into a thimble. Your physical body is 12. If I release even a fraction of my true power, you'll pop like an overfilled bladder." Naruto sat back on his heels, a ragged, wet breath escaping his lungs. He looked at the calendar on the wall. A red circle marked the date, graduation day. The day he would have failed, the day Mizuki would have betrayed him, the day he would have learned the secret of his burden. "I'm back," Naruto murmured. He walked to the window and pushed it open. Konoha lay before him, vibrant and untouched. The Hokage rock was pristine. The fourth's face didn't have the cracks from the orbital strikes of the Ten-Tails. The village breathed with a naive, beautiful peace. People were walking to work. Children were playing. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the faint rhythmic tapping of a blacksmith's hammer. Suddenly, a searing heat bloomed in his chest. Naruto gasped, clutching his ribs as a strange, emerald-green energy surged through his veins. It felt like hot lead being poured into his spirit. "The Hashirama cells," Kurama noted, his voice sharp with warning. "The logic of time travel is messy, Naruto. You had the prosthetic arm made of Hashirama's DNA in the future. It seems your soul brought the blueprint of those cells with it. Your Uzumaki vitality is reacting to them. You're undergoing a secondary awakening." Naruto fell to his knees as a small sprout of wood suddenly tore through the floorboards next to his hand. He stared at it. A tiny, budding sapling of oak, born from his own chakra. With style. "I can't have this," Naruto hissed through gritted teeth, forcing his chakra to coil and suppress the runaway growth. If the ANBU or the old man see this now, I'll be in a lab by noon. They'll think Orochimaru got to me. Then master it, Kurama challenged. You have the mind of a god and the body of a toddler. If you want to save them this time, you can't just be a loudmouth prankster. You have to be a ghost. Naruto spent the next 2 hours in a state of intense meditation. He relearned the map of his own body. He found the pathways where his chakra was restricted, the points where the fox's massive energy leaked through, and the new, pulsing green nodes of the wood style. He used his future knowledge of Sage Mode to balance the energies, coiling the wood style deep into his marrow where it would act as a silent enhancer to his strength and healing rather than a visible weapon. For now. He dressed slowly. The orange jumpsuit felt like a costume. It was too bright, too loud. A neon sign that screamed, "Look at me because I'm lonely." But as he looked at it, he realized Kurama was right. He had to play the part. If he suddenly showed up in black tactical gear with the eyes of a veteran, Danzo would have him disappeared before the sun set. He walked into the kitchen and found a carton of milk. He checked the date. Expired. He laughed. A genuine, small sound. Even after a trip through time, some things never changed. "Okay, Kurama," Naruto said, his gaze hardening as he looked at the kunai lying on his table. "The roadmap is simple. Pass the exam. Stop Mizuki. Keep Team 7 together. But this time, I'm not waiting for Sasuke to leave. I'm not waiting for Jiraiya to die. I'm going to build a fortress out of this village." "And the girl?" Kurama asked, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Naruto's mind flashed to Hinata, the way she had looked in the war, the way she had looked when they walked through the village as adults. A sharp pang of grief struck him, but he pushed it down. "Hinata deserves a version of me that isn't an oblivious idiot," Naruto said. "But I have to be careful. If I change too much too fast, the enemies will change their plans too. We need the timeline to stay predictable until I'm strong enough to break it." He grabbed his goggles, the ones he used to wear before he got his headband, and pulled them over his head. He looked in the mirror one last time. He practiced his idiot smile. It felt fake like a mask of porcelain, but it would have to do. He stepped out of his apartment, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed in the quiet hallway. As he walked down the stairs, he felt the familiar chakra signatures of the village. He could feel Irika-sensei at the academy, a warm, flickering candle of worry. He could feel the third Hokage's massive, old-growth forest of chakra in the tower. And then he felt it, a small, shy, but incredibly dense spark of chakra near the academy gates. Hinata. His heart hammered against his ribs. Not the heart of a child, but the heart of a man who had lost his soulmate and found her again. "Steady, Naruto," he whispered to himself. The Fourth Shinobi War was years away, but for Naruto Uzumaki, the first battle was just walking into a classroom without crying. The walk to the academy was a sensory assault. To anyone else, it was a beautiful spring morning in Konoha, but to Naruto it was a stroll through a graveyard filled with the living. He saw the baker, a man who would eventually lose his arm in the Pain Invasion, laughing as he set out fresh trays of melon pan. He saw the flower shop owner, Ino's mother, who would one day weep over a memorial stone, currently humming a tune while watering her hydrangeas. Every face was a memory of a casualty report. Every street corner was a place where he had once fought, bled, or watched a friend fall. "Breathe, Naruto," Kurama's voice rumbled, acting as a grounding wire for his fracturing psyche. "Your heart rate is spiking. You're leaking intent. If you don't settle down, the ANBU on the rooftops will think you're a transformation jutsu assassin." Naruto took a shuddering breath, forcing his hands into his pockets. He slumped his shoulders, rounding his posture to look more like the dead last everyone expected. He had to suppress the predator's gait he'd developed, the silent, efficient movement of a man who moved through shadows. "I know, Kurama. It's so loud. The life here, it's deafening." As he approached the academy gates, the familiar red-roofed building loomed over him. And there, standing near the fence, was the source of the chakra signature he had felt earlier. Hinata Hyuga. She was smaller than he remembered, fragile, almost. She was wearing her oversized hooded jacket, her fingers nervously poking at each other as she looked at the ground. She looked like a stiff breeze could knock her over. But Naruto knew better. He knew the steel that lived inside her. He knew the woman who would one day stand before a godlike being and declare her love while coughing up blood. He felt a sudden, violent urge to run to her, to pull her into a hug and tell her everything. He wanted to apologize for every time he'd ignored her, for every time he'd been too blind to see the devotion in her eyes. "Don't," Kurama warned. "You'll give her a heart attack, and then we're really off script." Naruto tightened his jaw and walked past her. He didn't stop, but as he moved through the gate, he let his shoulder accidentally brush against hers. It was a tiny contact, but it allowed him to send a microscopic pulse of his chakra, infused with a hint of Kurama's warmth, into her system. It was a silent, "I'm here," that she wouldn't understand, but her body would feel. Hinata gasped softly, her head snapping up. Her lavender eyes searched the crowd, landing on the back of a shock of blonde hair. She touched her shoulder, a faint blush creeping up her neck. For a moment she felt safe. It was an irrational feeling, but it lingered. Naruto entered the classroom, and the noise level hit him like a physical blow. Kiba was bragging about Akamaru. Shino was sitting in silent, bug-filled contemplation. And then, there was the cool side of the room. Sasuke Uchiha sat by the window, his chin resting on his interlaced fingers. He looked exactly as Naruto remembered, brooding, arrogant, and deeply, painfully lonely. He was a boy driven by a singular, poisonous goal, unaware that his entire life was a puppet show orchestrated by a man hiding in the shadows of the moon. Naruto felt a pang of genuine affection for the Uchiha. "I'm gonna save you too, you bastard, even if I have to beat you into the ground to do it." "Hey, Dobe!" Sasuke's voice cut through the air. He didn't even look at Naruto, but the edge was there. "You're late, ready to fail for the 4th time." Naruto let a wide, goofy grin split his face, the mask he had worn for years. "In your dreams, Sasuke team. Today's the day I become a ninja and start my path to being Hokage. Believe it." The classroom erupted in laughter. It was a familiar, mocking sound. Sakura Haruno rolled her eyes, her inner Sakura likely screaming about how annoying Naruto was. Naruto looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a wave of pity. She was so focused on Sasuke's back that she didn't see the world moving around her. In the original timeline, it took a war to make her find her own strength. This time, he would make sure she found it sooner. He took his seat at the back, slumping into the chair. His mind, however, was far from the classroom. He was mentally mapping out the Uzumaki ceiling chains. He needed to know if his current body could handle the strain. The chains weren't just chakra. They were a manifestation of the soul's will. "Kurama, if I use the chains during the Mizuki fight tonight, can we hide the chakra signature?" "Possible," the fox replied. "If I mask it with my own malicious intent, any observers will just think the seal is leaking. They won't recognize it as a hidden technique of a dead clan. But Naruto, the wood style is the real problem. It's dormant in your marrow, but it's hungry. It wants to grow. You need to feed it nature energy soon, or it will start eating your own vitality." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "I'll head to the Forest of Death after the graduation. For now, I play the fool." Irika-sensei walked in then, a stack of papers in his hand and a stern look on his face. Seeing Irika alive and well, without the scars of the later years, brought a lump to Naruto's throat. Irika was the first person to ever see him as a human being. "All right, settle down," Irika shouted. "Today is the final exam. We will be testing you on the basic clone jutsu. When I call your name, proceed to the testing room." The room went quiet. For many, this was the start of their career. For Naruto, it was the first milestone in his mission to prevent the apocalypse. Names were called. Sakura went and returned with a beaming smile and a blue headband. Sasuke went and returned with a look of bored indifference, though the headband was tied firmly to his forehead. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto stood up. He could feel Hinata's gaze on him, worried, hopeful. He could feel Sasuke's sideways glance. He walked into the testing room where Irika and Mizuki sat behind a table. 3 headbands sat on the table. Mizuki was smiling. That oily, false smile that Naruto now recognized as the expression of a predator. "Okay, Naruto," Irika said, his voice soft. He really wanted Naruto to pass. "The requirement is at least 3 functional clones. Whenever you're ready." Naruto took a breath. He could do a standard bunshin, but his chakra control was currently calibrated for high-level combat. A standard clone was actually harder for him now than a shadow clone because it required such a minuscule, delicate amount of energy. He closed his eyes. He didn't use the cross sign for the shadow clone. He used the standard tiger seal. He reached deep into his coils, bypassing the roaring ocean of Kurama's chakra and the budding green heat of the wood style, finding the tiny, flickering candle of his own base chakra. Mold, divide, manifest. Poof. 12 perfect, solid-looking clones appeared in the room. They weren't the pale, sickly illusions he used to make. They looked real. They breathed. One of them even winked at Mizuki. Irika's jaw dropped. Mizuki's smile flickered for a fraction of a second, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. 12. Irika breathed. And the quality, Naruto, these are perfect. No, these are beyond the requirement. Heh! Naruto rubbed the back of his head, giving a sheepish grin. I've been practicing, Irika-sensei. I told you I'd do it. Irika beamed, his eyes crinkling with genuine pride. He picked up a blue headband and handed it over. Congratulations, Naruto. You're a ninja. As Naruto tied the cold metal against his forehead, he felt the weight of it. It wasn't just a piece of cloth. It was a contract. He walked out of the room, but as he passed Mizuki, he caught the man's scent. It was the scent of betrayal, bitter and sharp. Mizuki thought he was playing Naruto, but Naruto was the one holding all the cards. Tonight, the forbidden scroll would be his. And tonight, he would take his first step into the shadows to become the protector Konoha didn't know it had. But as he stepped back into the classroom, his eyes met Hinata's. She saw the headband, and the radiance in her face was brighter than the morning sun. Naruto's heart skipped. I will do it right this time, Hinata. Promise. The afternoon sun dipped low, casting long, skeletal shadows across the village of Konoha. For most of the graduates, it was a day of celebration. Families gathered at Yakiniku-Q, and laughter echoed through the streets. But for Naruto, the air felt heavy, charged with the static of an impending storm. He spent the hours sitting on the swings outside the academy, the cold chain biting into his palms, playing the role of the lonely boy the village expected him to be. He could feel them, the eyes of the ANBU hidden in the tree-line, and the much darker, more jagged gaze of Mizuki watching him from a distance. He's moving, Naruto? Kurama's voice hummed in the back of his mind, a low thrum of anticipation. The snake is approaching. Try to look pathetic. It shouldn't be hard for you. Watch it, Fox. Naruto thought back, though there was no heat in it. Mizuki appeared as if from nowhere, leaning against the wooden frame of the swing set. He wore a mask of sympathy that Naruto now found physically revolting. Tough day, Naruto? Even though you passed, Irika-sensei was pretty hard on you, wasn't he? Naruto looked up, making sure his eyes looked slightly watery. I want to be strong, Mizuki-sensei. I want everyone to stop looking at me like I'm a mistake. Mizuki leaned in closer, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. There's a secret, you know? A way to get so strong that even the Hokage would have to acknowledge you. There's a scroll in the Hokage's residence, the Scroll of Seals. If you can take it and learn just one technique, you'll be a legend overnight. Naruto let a spark of greed light up his eyes. A secret scroll? Really? But that's forbidden. Only for those who aren't ready? Mizuki urged, his hand resting on Naruto's shoulder. Felt like a slug crawling on his skin. But you, I think you're special. Naruto nodded vigorously, jumping off the swing. I'll do it. I'll show everyone. As Mizuki walked away, his back turned. Naruto's expression flattened into a mask of cold iron. He didn't need Mizuki to tell him about the scroll. He needed the scroll to provide a reason for his sudden jump in power. If he was caught using high-level seals or the shadow clone jutsu later, he could simply point to the scroll as his source. It was the perfect cover for a time traveler. The heist was almost too easy. Naruto used his knowledge of the Hokage residence's guard rotations, the same rotations he had studied as a Hokage himself, to slip through the shadows. He didn't use the sexy jutsu to knock out the third Hokage this time. Instead, he waited for the old man to step out for his nightly pipe on the balcony. Naruto moved like a ghost, his small body slipping through a window and snatching the massive scroll from its pedestal. By the time the guards realized the pressure plate had been deactivated, Naruto was already a kilometer away, deep in the woods. He sat in a small clearing, the moonlight filtering through the canopy. He unrolled the parchment. The multi-shadow clone jutsu was the first entry. He skipped it. He already knew it better than the man who had written it. He scrolled further, his eyes scanning the forbidden kinjutsu. The flying thunder god, Hiraishin. It was there, his father's legacy. The ink was old, the seals complex. Naruto stared at the formula, his mind already deconstructing the spatial coordinates. To a 12-year-old, it would look like gibberish. To Naruto, it looked like a map home. "You're not going to learn it in an hour, Naruto," Kurama warned. "Even with your memories, your current brain hasn't developed the spatial processing power to jump without turning your insides into outsides." "I don't need to master the jump tonight," Naruto replied, his fingers tracing the seal. "I just need to plant the seed. If I start practicing the anchoring now, I can have it ready by the Chunin exams." He pulled out a small ink brush and a blank scroll he had brought along. He didn't copy the whole thing, that would be treason. Instead, he copied the core theory of the Uzumaki adamantine chains that was hidden in the margins of the scroll's sealing section. It was a failsafe left by his mother's kin, a secret meant only for an Uzumaki eyes. Suddenly, the brush in his hand stopped. The emerald heat in his marrow flared. "He's here," Kurama hissed. It wasn't Mizuki. It was Irika. The man burst into the clearing, panting, his face a mask of terror and relief. "Naruto, what have you done? Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in?" Naruto looked up, rubbing the back of his head. "Irika-sensei, look, I learned a cool move. Now I can be a ninja for real, right?" Irika froze, his eyes softening as he looked at the boy, at the loneliness he thought drove the theft. "Naruto, Mizuki told you to do this, didn't he?" Before Naruto could answer, a hail of kunai whistled through the air. Naruto didn't even think. His body moved on instinct. He grabbed Irika by the vest and threw him to the side, his small frame moving with a speed that defied physics. He landed in a low crouch, 3 kunai caught between his fingers. Mizuki stepped from the shadows, perched on a thick branch. He looked different now. The facade was gone, replaced by a sneer of pure malice. "Give me the scroll, Naruto. You've done your job. Now die like the monster you are." "Monster?" Irika gasped, struggling to stand. "Mizuki, what are you talking about?" "You didn't tell him, Irika?" Mizuki laughed, a jagged, broken sound. "There's a reason the village hates you, Naruto. There's a reason you were born in blood. 12 years ago, the nine-tailed fox didn't just disappear. The 4th Hokage sealed it inside you." The silence that followed was heavy. Irika looked at Naruto, his heart breaking, expecting to see a boy shattered by the truth. Naruto didn't look shattered. He stood slowly, his blonde hair casting a shadow over his eyes. "Is that all?" Naruto's voice was low, devoid of its usual high-pitched energy. It was the voice of a man who had walked through hell. "You think I didn't know? You think a fox's breath doesn't leave a scent?" Mizuki's sneer faltered. "What?" Naruto looked up. His eyes weren't blue. They were a piercing, glowing violet, the result of his Uzumaki chakra mixing with the suppressed wood style and a hint of Kurama's leaking power. "You touched my sensei," Naruto said. His voice echoed, sounding like 2 people speaking at once. "And you tried to steal the legacy of my people." Naruto performed a single hand seal, not the cross for the shadow clones. He slammed his palms onto the ground. With style, silent strangling overgrowth. The earth groaned. Huge, thick roots erupted from beneath Mizuki's tree, twisting upward like the fingers of a giant. Mizuki shrieked, trying to leap away, but the wood was faster. It moved with a life of its own, guided by Naruto's immense, refined will. The roots slammed into Mizuki, pinning him against the trunk of a massive oak. The wood didn't kill him. Naruto needed him alive for interrogation, but it crushed the air from his lungs and shattered both of his arms. Irika stared, paralyzed. Wood, with style? The first's power. Naruto didn't answer. He turned to Mizuki, walking toward him with the slow, rhythmic pace of an executioner. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, blank sealing tag. "You wanted a secret, Mizuki?" Naruto whispered, leaning in close so only the traitor could hear. "Here's one. I've already seen you die once. I wasn't impressed the first time either. He slapped the tag onto Mizuki's forehead, instantly knocking the man unconscious and sealing his chakra. The clearing went silent. Naruto felt the wood-style energy recede, the emerald heat cooling in his veins. He turned back to Irika, his eyes bleeding back to their normal blue. He slumped his shoulders, his face shifting back into the scared kid mask. Irika-sensei, I'm sorry. I didn't want him to hurt you. Irika didn't move for a long time. Then, he walked forward and pulled Naruto into a tight embrace. He didn't ask about the wood. He didn't ask about the eyes. He just held the boy who had carried a burden he never should have had to bear. It's okay, Naruto, Irika whispered, tears streaming down his face. You saved me. You're a hero. You hear me? A hero. Naruto closed his eyes, his head resting on Irika's shoulder. In the distance, he could feel the ANBU approaching. He could feel the third Hokage's gaze through his crystal ball. The stage was set. He had revealed a rare bloodline to explain his power. He had secured Irika's loyalty, and in his pocket he had the notes for the Hiraishin. One step at a time, Kurama, Naruto thought. Not bad, brat, the fox replied, his tail swishing in the darkness of the mindscape. But the old man in the tower is going to have questions. Many, many questions. Naruto smiled. He was a veteran of war. He knew exactly how to balance the books of truth and lies. The morning following the incident in the forest was draped in a deceptive serenity. The village of Konoha carried on with its bustling rhythm, unaware that the tectonic plates of its future had shifted. For Naruto, however, the peace was punctuated by the rhythmic thud of a heartbeat that wasn't entirely his own. The wood style was no longer a dormant memory. It was a living, breathing pulse in his marrow, a green fire that hummed every time his feet touched the soil. He stood before the massive, circular doors of the Hokage's office. 2 ANBU stood guard, their porcelain masks. One an owl, one a tiger, betraying nothing. Yet Naruto could feel the needle-sharp prickle of their killing intent. They weren't looking at a boy. They were looking at a Jinchuriki who had stolen a forbidden scroll and manifested a legendary bloodline in a single night. Steady, Naruto. Kurama's voice was a low, grounding vibration. The old man's chakra is turbulent. He's stuck between relief that you're safe and the cold pragmatism of a leader who just saw a nuclear weapon grow a new set of teeth. I know, Naruto thought, his fingers twitching. I just have to give him enough truth to satisfy him, but keep the core hidden. The doors creaked open. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, sat behind a desk piled high with paperwork. The room smelled of old parchment and the sharp, cherry-wood scent of his pipe tobacco. He looked older than Naruto remembered. His skin more translucent, the liver spots more pronounced. Seeing him alive, before the tragedy of the Chunin exams, sent a pang of grief through Naruto that nearly broke his mask. You summoned me, Gramps? Naruto chirped, forcing his voice into that high, irritating register. He rubbed the back of his head, looking sheepish. Hiruzen didn't smile. He exhaled a long gray plume of smoke. Naruto, sit. Naruto sat. The chair felt too big, reminding him of his physical age. Irika has given me his report, Hiruzen began, his eyes sharp as a hawk's behind his spectacles. He says you saved his life. He also says you manifested a technique that hasn't been seen in this village since the time of the first Hokage. Mokutan. Naruto looked down at his hands, playing with the hem of his orange jacket. I didn't know what it was, Gramps. I was just so angry. Mizuki team was going to kill Irika-sensei, and suddenly, I felt this green heat in my chest. Felt like my skin was turning into bark. I just wanted to grab him, and the ground just listened to me. Hiruzen leaned forward. Naruto, the wood style is not something one simply does. It is a Kekkai Genkai of the highest order, a union of water and earth natures. Have you ever practiced such things? I don't even know what a nature is, Naruto lied, his voice rising in faux frustration. I just want to be Hokage. If the first Hokage had it, then it just means I'm on the right track, right? Hiruzen sighed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. He wanted to believe the boy. He needed to believe that this was a miracle of Uzumaki vitality reacting to the fox's chakra, rather than a calculated plot. We will have to monitor this, Naruto. It is a powerful gift, but a dangerous one. For now, you are to tell no one. Not your teammates, not your friends. To the world, you defeated Mizuki with the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Is that understood? Got it. Top secret mission. Naruto gave a mock salute. As Naruto left the tower, he felt the weight of the Hokage's gaze lingering on his back. He had bought himself time. Hiruzen would likely chalk it up to a mutation or a dormant trait of the Senjuzumaki lineage. The next few days were a blur of administrative boredom, team placements. Naruto sat in the classroom, waiting for the inevitable. Team 7, Irika announced. Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno. Sakura groaned, dropping her head onto the desk. And Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke didn't react, but Naruto saw the way his jaw tightened. To Sasuke, Naruto was still the dead last. Naruto didn't mind. He looked over at the other side of the room, where Hinata sat with Shino and Kiba. She looked relieved that she wasn't on his team. Not because she didn't want to be, but because her shyness was still a physical wall. Not for long, Naruto thought. That evening, Naruto didn't go to Ichiraka Ramen. Instead, he tracked a specific chakra signature toward the training grounds near the Hyuga estate. He found her under a sprawling wisteria tree, practicing her gentle fist against a wooden post. Her movements were precise but lacked confidence. She pulled her strikes, afraid of the power she carried. "You're leading with your left shoulder too much, Hinata-chan." Hinata shrieked, nearly tripping over her own feet as she spun around. Her face turned a shade of crimson that rivaled a sunset. "And Naruto-kun, I didn't see you." Naruto walked forward, his gait relaxed. He wasn't the loudmouth prankster now. He let his true maturity bleed through his eyes just a little. "Your form is good, but you're fighting yourself, not the air. You're afraid of hurting the post." Hinata looked at her feet, her fingers twisting together. I don't like fighting, Naruto-kun. But my father, the clan. The clan doesn't define you, Hinata, Naruto said softly. He stepped into her personal space. Not enough to scare her, but enough to make her look up. "I have a secret, something I can't tell the others. But I want to show you." He held out his hand. He focused on the green heat in his marrow. Slowly, a small, white lily sprouted from the center of his palm, its petals unfurling in the twilight. Hinata's eyes widened. "Is that, with style? But that's..." "It's a gift," Naruto interrupted, "and I'm going to use it to protect everyone. But I need people I can trust, people who are strong enough to stand with me." He closed his hand, and the flower dissolved into pure chakra. "I see how hard you work, Hinata. You have more heart than anyone in that classroom. Let me help you." Hinata felt a surge of warmth. Not the shy, fluttering heat of a crush, but something deeper. A spark of validation she had never received from her father. "How?" "I'm going to teach you how to sense natural energy," Naruto said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The Byakugan sees chakra, but nature energy is everywhere. If you can tap into that, your gentle fist won't just hit Tenketsu. It will command the very air around your opponent." He spent the next 3 hours with her. He didn't teach her jutsu, he taught her how to breathe. He had her sit in the grass, guiding her to feel the vibration of the earth. Because of his with style, he acted as a conductor, pulling a tiny, safe amount of nature energy toward them. For the first time in her life, Hinata felt the world wake up. She felt the sap rising in the trees, the insects in the grass, and the massive, golden warmth of Naruto's soul next to her. When she finally struck the post at the end of the session, the wood didn't just crack. It splintered under the weight of a strike reinforced by the world itself. She stared at her hands, trembling. I did that." "We did that," Naruto corrected with a wink. "Same time tomorrow? Don't tell your dad. Let it be our little secret." Hinata nodded fervently, a small, genuine smile lighting up her face. It was the first butterfly Naruto had released into the timeline. As Naruto walked home, he felt a familiar, lazy chakra signature perched on a nearby fence. "You're a busy kid, aren't you?" Naruto stopped. A man with silver, gravity-defying hair and a mask covering half his face sat there, reading a small orange book. Kakashi Hatake. Naruto's heart ached. Kakashi, the man who had lost everyone, who would eventually become Hokage after the war. "You must be our new sensei," Naruto said, slipping back into his mask. "You're late." I've been waiting for hours. Kakashi closed his book with a snap, his lone visible eye crinkling into a smile. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way. But tell me, Naruto, since when did you start giving private lessons to the Hyuga heiress? He's sharp, Kurama chuckled. He's been watching you for 20 minutes. He didn't see the wood, but he saw the result of that strike. Let him wonder, Naruto thought. I'm just helping a friend, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto shouted, breaking into a run. See you at the bells tomorrow. Don't be late or I'll paint your face on the Hokage rock. Kakashi watched the boy disappear into the night. His smile faded, replaced by a look of deep contemplation. He had been assigned to watch Minato's son for years, but this was different. The boy's movements, his speech, the way the air seemed to settle around him. It wasn't the behavior of a 12-year-old. Something is changing, Kakashi whispered to the empty street. He didn't know how right he was. The morning air at Training Ground 3 was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. It was a sight Naruto knew intimately. He had bled on this grass, failed here, and eventually triumphed here across several lifetimes. As he stood beside Sasuke and Sakura, he felt a strange sense of vertigo. To his teammates, this was a nervous beginning. To Naruto, it was the first tactical engagement of a long shadow war. Sasuke stood several feet apart, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the horizon with a cold, singular focus. Sakura was closer to Naruto, but her eyes were glued to the Uchiha's profile, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her pink tunic. She was still a girl living in a dream of romance, unaware that the man they were waiting for was a veteran who had seen the darkest corners of the shinobi world. He's late. Again, Kurama grumbled within the seal. If I had a tail for every hour that man has wasted, I'd be an 18-tailed fox. Why do you tolerate this, Naruto? Because patience is the first lesson, Kurama. Naruto thought back, leaning against one of the 3 wooden posts that dominated the clearing. Besides, it gives me time to observe. Look at Sasuke's chakra. It's tight, coiled like a spring about to snap. He's trying too hard to be the lone wolf. If I don't break that habit today, he'll walk right into Orochimaru's arms in a few months. Finally, with a puff of white smoke that arrived 3 hours past the scheduled time, Kakashi Hatake appeared atop a nearby boulder. He was still engrossed in Ika paradise, his lone visible eye lazily scanning his new subordinates. Yo, he said, raising a hand in a casual wave. Sorry I'm late. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around. Liar! Sakura and Naruto shouted in unison, though Naruto's shout was a carefully constructed facade. Kakashi hopped down, stowing his book. He pulled 2 small silver bells from his pocket. They jingled with a clear, crystalline sound that seemed to cut through the morning mist. Here's the deal. You have until noon to get these bells from me. Those who don't have a bell by then, get tied to those posts and watch me eat my lunch. Oh, and you'll be sent back to the academy. Sakura gasped. But there are only 2 bells. Exactly, Kakashi's eye crinkled. At least one of you is guaranteed to fail. You can use any weapon, including shuriken. Come at me with the intent to kill, or you won't stand a chance. But sensei, that's dangerous, Sakura cried out. Naruto didn't say anything. He felt Sasuke's chakra sharpen. The Uchiha was already calculating, his hand drifting toward his shuriken holster. Start, Kakashi commanded. In an instant, Sasuke and Sakura vanished into the undergrowth. Naruto, however, stayed exactly where he was. He stood in the center of the clearing, his hands tucked into his pockets, his blue eyes locked onto Kakashi's. Kakashi paused, his hand halfway back to his book. Aren't you going to hide, Naruto? You're a target standing out in the open like that. Hiding is for people who don't want to be found, sensei, Naruto said, his voice dropping the high-pitched idiot tone for just a second. It was a calculated slip, a hook to catch Kakashi's interest. I want you to see exactly what's coming. Before Kakashi could respond, Naruto moved. He didn't use the Hiraishin, that would be suicidal to reveal now, but he used the refined footwork of the Toad Sages. He blurred across the grass, not as a frantic child, but as a predator. Kakashi's eye widened. He barely had time to drop his book before Naruto was in his guard. The boy didn't throw a wild punch. He aimed a precise palm strike at Kakashi's solar plexus, the movement infused with a microscopic amount of wood-style energy to enhance his physical density. Thud. Kakashi blocked the strike with his forearm, but he felt the impact vibrate all the way up to his shoulder. It felt like being hit by a falling log, not a 12-year-old's hand. Interesting, Kakashi muttered, leaping back. Where did he get that kind of weight behind his strikes? Sasuke! Sakura! Naruto shouted, his voice carrying across the entire training ground. Stop playing his game. He's a jonin, he's fought wars. You think you can take him one-on-one? Don't be idiots. If we don't work together, we're all going back to the academy. From the bushes, Sasuke scowled. Work together? With a loser like him? I need to prove I'm better than everyone. Sakura was hesitant. She wanted to help Sasuke, but she was terrified of looking weak. Naruto didn't wait for them. He performed a single hand seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 30 Narutos erupted into existence. Unlike the clones of the past, these didn't just rush in blindly. They formed a tactical perimeter. 10 clones began a coordinated taijutsu assault, 5 began weaving a transformation sequence, and the rest moved into the trees. Kakashi was forced to move seriously now. He dodged, parried, and flicked away clones, but they kept coming with a terrifying level of coordination. They weren't just attacking. They were hurting him. Now! The real Naruto yelled. Sasuke, unable to resist a clear opening, lunged from the shadows with a barrage of shuriken. Sakura, seeing Sasuke move, threw her own kunai to provide cover fire. For the next 10 minutes, the clearing was a whirlwind of steel and orange jumpsuits. Naruto's clones acted as the glue for the team. When Sasuke overextended, a Naruto clone would shove him out of the way of Kakashi's counter-trip. When Sakura was nearly caught in a genjutsu, a Naruto clone would tap her shoulder to disrupt her chakra flow. Kakashi was beginning to sweat, not from exhaustion, but from the sheer cognitive load of tracking a 12-year-old who was commanding a battlefield like a seasoned general. He's using the clones to bridge the gap in their skill levels, Kakashi realized. He's forcing Sasuke and Sakura to be part of a formation. Finally, Naruto saw his chance. He performed a silent hand seal, tapping into the emerald heat in his marrow. Beneath the tall grass, thin, wiry roots snaked toward Kakashi's ankles. It was a wood-style manipulation so subtle that even a Sharingan might miss it in the chaos. The roots snagged Kakashi's heel for a fraction of a second. It was all the time Sasuke needed. The Uchiha dived, his hand outstretched, his fingers brushing the cool metal of a bell. Kakashi sensed the trap and flickered away at the last millisecond, but the bells jingled violently. He reappeared on the wooden post, his breathing slightly elevated. He looked down at his feet, then back at Naruto. The roots had already retreated into the earth. Noon, Kakashi announced as the alarm on the post went off. The trio stood in the clearing, panting. Sasuke looked frustrated, he had been so close. Sakura looked dejected. Naruto just stood there, a small, knowing smile on his face. You didn't get the bells, Kakashi said, his voice stern. No, Naruto agreed. But Sasuke's kunai cut your pocket? Sakura's distraction forced you to use a substitution, and my clones kept you from reading your book for 20 minutes. We didn't get the bells, but we fought as a team. Kakashi looked at them for a long time. He saw Sasuke's pride warring with the realization that Naruto had saved his hide 3 times during the fight. He saw Sakura looking at Naruto with a new sense of wonder. In the shinobi world, Kakashi began, his voice dropping into that somber tone that Naruto knew so well. Those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. He paused, then his eye crinkled into a smile. You pass. Team 7 starts its first mission tomorrow. Sakura cheered, jumping into the air. Sasuke gave a small, begrudging HN. But Naruto noticed he didn't move away when Naruto slapped him on the back. Told you, Sasuke team. We're a team. As they walked away, Kakashi stayed behind. He looked at the ground where Naruto had stood. There was a small, green sprout pushing through the dirt. A sapling that shouldn't be there. Minato-sensei, Kakashi whispered. Your son. I think he's lived 100 lives in the span of 12 years. That evening, Naruto returned to the wisteria tree. Hinata was already there, her eyes bright with anticipation. She looked different. Her posture was straighter, her chakra more resonant. I passed, Naruto-kun, she whispered. I know, Naruto said, sitting down beside her. He reached out and took her hand. It was warm this time, not the cold hand of a dying woman on a battlefield. But passing is just the beginning, Hinata. The world is going to get very dangerous soon. Are you ready to work harder than anyone else? Hinata squeezed his hand, her lavender eyes reflecting the first stars of the evening. As long as I'm with you, I'm ready. Naruto smiled, and for the first time since he had returned to the past, the weight on his chest felt a little lighter. He wasn't just a ghost anymore. He was a man building a future, one heartbeat at a time. The transition from the mundane chores of the village to the jagged edges of a real mission was a rhythm Naruto knew by heart. For weeks, Team 7 had been relegated to the D-rank purgatory, finding lost cats, weeding the gardens of grumpy elders, and picking up trash from the Naka River. Naruto played his part perfectly, grumbling loudly about the boredom while secretly using the time to study the chakra signatures of his teammates. He watched Sakura's efficiency and Sasuke's growing impatience. He also noticed Kakashi watching him, a silent sentinel who was clearly trying to reconcile the dead last academy student with the boy who had coordinated a tactical assault during the bell test. Finally, Naruto's outburst in the Hokage's office, a carefully timed tantrum demanding a real mission, had yielded results. They were now walking toward the border of the Land of Fire, escorting a grizzled, sake-swilling bridge builder named Tazuna. The air is changing, Kurama rumbled, his consciousness expanding like a dark tide within Naruto's mind. Salt and Rot were nearing the coast, and Naruto were being followed. Two of them. Their chakra is oily, hidden mist. The demon brothers, Naruto thought, his eyes scanning the horizon with a practiced ease that looked like idle curiosity to his teammates. I remember. This is where Sasuke gets his first taste of a real kill-or-be-killed scenario. I need to let him face it, but I won't let him get scarred. Not like last time. The group walked past a puddle on the road. It hadn't rained in days. To an amateur, it was an anomaly. To a shinobi, it was a death trap. Naruto didn't stop. He didn't even twitch. He felt the moment the chains erupted from the water. Clink, riot. In a spray of staged gore, Kakashi was shredded by the weighted chains of the Chunin-level assassins. Sakura screamed, her body locking up in terror. Sasuke, however, moved with the cold grace of an Uchiha. He intercepted the chains with a shuriken and a kunai, pinning them to a tree and using the momentum to kick the brothers in their masks. Naruto moved then, but not toward the assassins. He stepped in front of Tazuna, his hand resting on the hilt of a kunai he hadn't yet drawn. He didn't need to fight the brothers. Sasuke needed this victory to build his confidence. Instead, Naruto focused on the second puddle, the one the brothers had left behind as a fallback. As one of the demon brothers pivoted to attack Tazuna, Naruto simply stuck out a foot. It was a clumsy-looking trip, but it was timed with the precision of a master. The assassin stumbled, and Naruto followed up with a palm strike to the man's lower back. He infused a tiny, needle-like shard of wood-style chakra into the strike. It didn't erupt into a tree. Instead, it acted like a sedative, temporarily paralyzing the man's nervous system. The assassin hit the ground with a dull thud, unable to move a muscle. Kakashi reappeared then, a puff of smoke revealing the shredded body to be nothing more than a log. He had the second brother in a headlock, a kunai at his throat. Good job, Sasuke. Very smooth, Kakashi said, his eye crinkling. Then he turned to Naruto, his gaze lingering on the paralyzed man at Naruto's feet. And Naruto, nice trip. Hee, I just got lucky, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, the idiot mask firmly in place. Kakashi didn't look convinced, but he turned his attention to Tazuna. The truth came out quickly. The mission wasn't a C rank. It was an A rank. They were being hunted by Gato's mercenaries, and the man they were truly afraid of was Zabuza Momochi, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. We should go back, Sakura whispered, her voice trembling. This is too much for Genin. Sasuke looked at his trembling hands. Not out of fear, but out of adrenaline. I'm staying. Naruto looked at the horizon, where the mist was beginning to thicken. He could feel a cold, oppressive chakra gathering in the distance. It felt like a sharpened blade held against a throat. Zabuza. I'm staying too, Naruto said, his voice unusually quiet. If we run now, we'll never be ready for what's coming. 2 days later, the mist became a wall. They were on the unfinished bridge, the air thick and damp. The silence was absolute, save for the lapping of waves against the pylons. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. "He's here," Kakashi warned, his hand moving to lift his headband, revealing the Sharingan. A massive blade, the Kubikirabocho, came spinning through the mist like a vengeful spirit. The team ducked as it embedded itself into a tree trunk. A man appeared, standing atop the hilt. He was wrapped in bandages, his eyes those of a man who had forgotten the meaning of mercy. "Kakashi of the Sharingan," Zabuza rasped, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "I didn't expect to see you here. Hand over the old man, and the brats might live." "Not happening," Kakashi replied. The battle erupted with a violence that left Sakura and Sasuke breathless. Water clones, hidden mist jutsu, and the high-speed clash of steel filled the air. Naruto watched with a cold, analytical mind. He knew the flow of this fight. He knew that Kakashi would eventually be trapped in a water prison, and that he and Sasuke would have to pull off a demon wind shuriken trick to save him. But Naruto wanted more than just a repeat of history. He wanted to end this without the trauma. As Kakashi was encased in the swirling orb of the water prison, Zabuza laughed, a hollow sound in the fog. "Your sensei is finished. Now, which of you little rabbits wants to die first?" Sasuke lunged, his pride refusing to let him cower. He was swept away like a fly by a water clone. Naruto stepped forward. "Sasuke, the shuriken plan. Now!" It happened exactly like the first time, the transformation, the hidden shuriken, the surprise attack that forced Zabuza to break the prison. Kakashi was freed, and the battle of the great waterfall jutsu commenced. However, as Zabuza was pinned to a tree by Kakashi's kunai, and the hunter Nin, Haku, appeared to kill him with needles, Naruto did something different. As Haku moved to retrieve Zabuza's body, Naruto blurred. He didn't use a jutsu, he used pure physical speed. He appeared beside Haku, his hand gripping the masked teen's wrist. The air in the clearing turned frigid. Haku's eyes widened behind the mask. He tried to pull away, but Naruto's grip was like a vice made of iron. "He's not dead," Naruto whispered, his voice so low only Haku could hear. "You used Senbon to trigger a temporary death state. I know your trick, Haku." Haku froze. The name. How did this boy know his name? "Let go, shinobi," Haku hissed, his other hand forming a seal. "I'm not your enemy," Naruto said, his cerulean eyes burning with an intensity that made Haku hesitate. "Gato is going to betray you. He doesn't care about the demon of the mist. He's going to kill you both once the bridge builder is dead. If you want Zabuza to live, meet me at the forest edge at midnight. Alone." Naruto released his grip and stepped back, his face immediately shifting into a look of scared confusion. Haku stared at him for a heartbeat, his mind reeling, before grabbing Zabuza's corpse and vanishing in a swirl of needles and mist. That night, Naruto sat in the woods, the emerald heat of the wood style humming in his chest. He was meditating, pulling in nature energy to soothe his aching coils. His 12-year-old body was struggling to process the level of chakra control he was demanding of it. "You're playing with fire, Naruto," Kurama warned. "If Kakashi finds out you're negotiating with the enemy, he'll have to report you. This isn't how a genin behaves." Kakashi is exhausted from using the Sharingan. He's asleep, Naruto thought. And Haku is a tool that doesn't want to be a weapon. I can save them both. I need allies for the war, Kurama. Allies that the Akatsuki won't see coming. A rustle of leaves signaled Haku's arrival. He wasn't wearing his mask. He looked hauntingly beautiful in the moonlight, his long hair framing a face filled with a deep, tragic weariness. "How do you know my name?" Haku asked, his hand resting on a pouch of senbon. Naruto didn't stand up. He kept his eyes closed. "I know a lot of things, Haku. I know you have the ice release. I know you think you're just a tool for Zabuza because he gave you a purpose when the world threw you away." Haku's breath hitched. "I am his tool. That is my purpose." "A tool can be used to build, not just to kill," Naruto said, finally opening his eyes. He reached out and touched the ground. Slowly, a small white flower sprouted from the dirt between them. "This is my gift. It's also a curse. The world wants us to be weapons, Haku. But we don't have to be." He looked Haku in the eye. Gato has hired 100 mercenaries. They are coming to the bridge in 3 days. They aren't there to support Zabuza. They are there to clean up the survivors. Zabuza will die, and you will die protecting him. Is that the end you want for the man you love? Haku looked at the flower, his composure finally breaking. What do you want? A third option, Naruto said. Faked deaths. True this time. I will help you disappear. In exchange, when the time comes, when a man with a single eye and a mask of orange comes for the world, you will answer my call. Haku stared at him, the silence of the forest stretching between them. For the first time in his life, Haku didn't see a boy. He saw a king offering a pact. I will speak to Zabuza, Haku whispered. The morning of the final confrontation arrived with a suffocating, unnatural fog. It wasn't the drifting, misty breath of the ocean. It was Zabuza's Kirigakure no Jutsu, thick as wool and smelling of cold iron. Naruto stood at the center of the unfinished bridge, his feet planted firmly on the cold stone. Beside him, Sasuke was a coiled spring of nervous energy, his Sharingan, now matured to 2 tomo in his right eye, flickering as he tried to pierce the gloom. The boy is terrified, Naruto, Kurama noted, his voice a low vibration in the back of Naruto's skull. He's hiding it behind that Uchiha arrogance, but his heart is thudding like a trapped bird. Are you sure you can pull this off without him ruining the play? Sasuke needs to believe the stakes are real, Naruto replied, his gaze fixed on a specific ripple in the mist. If he doesn't feel the brush of death, he won't grow. I just have to be the safety net he never sees. Suddenly, the mist swirled, and Haku appeared. He wasn't the gentle youth Naruto had spoken to in the woods. He was the Hunter Nin, a silent executor of Zabuza's will. With a blur of hand seals that were too fast for a normal genin to follow, Haku manifested his signature technique. Secret arts. Demonic mirroring ice crystals. Shards of ice erupted from the moisture in the air, forming a dome of mirrors that encased Naruto and Sasuke. Haku stepped into the glass, his reflection appearing in every single mirror simultaneously. I do not wish to kill you, Haku's voice echoed hollow and detached. But I will protect my precious person. Please, do not struggle. Sasuke snarled, launching a volley of fire-style fireball jutsu. The flames roared against the ice, but the mirrors didn't even melt. They were reinforced by Haku's immense chakra. The counterattack was instantaneous, a hailstorm of sunbon needles that rained down from every direction. Naruto moved with a fluidity that looked like desperate luck. He pulled Sasuke down, the needles whistling through the space where the Uchiha's head had been a second before. Stay down, Sasuke team, Naruto shouted, slipping back into his loud-mouthed persona. We need a plan. Shut up, Dobe, Sasuke hissed, blood trickling from a scratch on his cheek. I can see his movement. I just need to be faster. For the next 20 minutes, the dome was a slaughterhouse of light and ice. Sasuke pushed himself to the absolute limit, his Sharingan tracking Haku's blurs, his body becoming a map of shallow punctures. Naruto, meanwhile, was doing something far more subtle. Every time he hit the ground, he was threading microscopic pulses of wood-style chakra into the bridge itself. He wasn't building a weapon, he was building a sensor network. He could feel Kakashi fighting Zabuza several dozen meters away. He could feel the cold, sharp precision of the Chidori beginning to gather in Kakashi's palm. It's time, Naruto thought. Sasuke, behind you, Naruto yelled. Haku lunged, aiming for a non-lethal strike on Sasuke's shoulder to incapacitate him. But Naruto didn't just block it. He threw himself in front of Sasuke, catching the Senbon in his own arm, while his other hand reached out and gripped the edge of one of the ice mirrors. Through that contact, Naruto sent a command. The emerald heat in his marrow surged. Underneath the bridge, out of sight of the combatants, thick, flexible vines of wood erupted from the pylons. They snaked up through the cracks in the stone, positioning themselves right beneath where Haku's reflections were strongest. In the mist outside the dome, the sound of chirping birds filled the air. Kakashi's lightning blade was ready. Zabuza, it's over, Kakashi's voice rang out. Naruto saw Haku's eyes flicker. The boy's devotion was absolute. He was preparing to leap out of the mirrors to act as a human shield for Zabuza. Now, Kurama! As Haku leaped, Naruto didn't let him go alone. He lunged forward, grabbing Haku's waist. To Sasuke, it looked like Naruto was trying to tackle the enemy. In reality, Naruto was using his weight to slightly alter Haku's trajectory. As they burst through the ice mirrors, the lightning blade came thrusting through the fog. Naruto performed a silent, one-handed seal. The wood vines beneath the bridge floor snapped upward. They didn't hit Kakashi. They hit the stone right in front of Zabuza. The bridge buckled slightly, creating a momentary upheaval that forced Kakashi to adjust his strike. Instead of piercing Haku's heart, the Chidori tore through Haku's shoulder and Naruto's side. Blood sprayed across the gray stone. "Naruto!" Kakashi screamed, his eye widening in horror as he realized he had struck his own student. Zabuza stared, paralyzed. Haku lay on the ground, gasping, his mask shattered to reveal his pale, shocked face. Naruto collapsed beside him, his orange jacket rapidly staining crimson. "You're a masochist, brat?" Kurama grumbled. Though he was already knitting Naruto's cells back together at an accelerated rate, that hurt even me. "It had to look real," Naruto gasped mentally. "If they don't think we're dying, Gato won't show his face." The mist began to dissipate. The sound of clapping hands echoed from the end of the bridge. Gato appeared, flanked by over 100 tattered, bloodthirsty mercenaries. "Well, well," the small man smirked, his cane tapping the stone. "The demon of the mist looks more like a wet puppy. And you, Leaf Ninja, thanks for doing the heavy lifting. Now I don't have to pay these two a single Ryo. Kill them all. Every last one of them." Zabuza looked at Haku, who was bleeding out, and then at Naruto, who had saved Haku's life at the cost of his own. The demon's eyes, usually as cold as the mist, finally cracked. "Kid," Zabuza rasped, looking at Naruto, "give me your kunai." Naruto, feigning a deathly weakness, reached into his pouch and slid a kunai across the floor. "Make them pay." Zabuza snatched the blade in his teeth, his arms already broken and useless from Kakashi's previous strikes. He turned toward the army of mercenaries like a ghost of the old wars. "Zabuza, wait," Kakashi started, but he was too busy tending to Naruto's wound. Zabuza didn't wait. He charged. What followed was a dance of carnage that Sakura would never forget. Zabuza moved through the mercenaries like a scythe through wheat, taking hit after hit, blades burying themselves in his back. But he didn't stop until he reached Gato. With a final, guttural roar, he tore the man's throat out. As Zabuza collapsed into the snow that was beginning to fall, Naruto did the final part of his plan. He reached out and grabbed Haku's hand. He used a tiny amount of Uzumaki sealing chakra to suppress Haku's heartbeat to a near stop, a true death state. Then, he did the same to himself, leaving just enough life for Kurama to keep him conscious. To Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke, it looked like Naruto Uzumaki and the boy from the mist had breathed their last. The funeral was held on the hill overlooking the great Naruto Bridge. 2 graves were marked with the swords of the fallen. The villagers wept for their heroes. But at midnight, under the cover of a thick, natural fog, the earth of the graves shifted. Naruto sat up, coughing as he pushed through the loose soil. Beside him, Haku rose, looking around in a daze. Further down the hill, Zabuza, whose death Naruto had faked using a specialized wood-style parasite that mimicked organ failure, was being dragged out of his grave by a few of Naruto's shadow clones. "You're a monster, kid," Zabuza grunted, spitting out dirt as he looked at his healed chest. "Why?" Naruto stood up, the moonlight reflecting in his cerulean eyes. He didn't look like a boy. He looked like a king standing over a new territory. "Because the world thinks you're dead," Naruto said. "And a dead man can go anywhere. Stay in the shadows. Head to the land of iron. Build me a network, Zabuza. When the war comes, I'll need a demon." Haku bowed deeply, his eyes filled with a new, fierce loyalty. "We owe you our lives, Naruto-sama." Naruto watched them disappear into the night. He then walked back toward the bridge builder's house, his wounds already nothing but faint scars. He had saved the wave. He had gained a private army. And most importantly, he had kept his team whole. Next stop, Kurama, Naruto thought as he saw the gates of Konoha in his mind's eye, the Chunin exams, and the snake in the grass. The journey back to Konoha was draped in a strange, contemplative silence. The Land of Waves was a different place than it had been when Team 7 first arrived. The bridge stood tall as a monument to courage, and the demon of the mist was a legend buried in a grave that Naruto knew was empty. For Sasuke, the mission had been a brutal awakening. He walked a few paces behind Kakashi, his gaze fixed on the back of Naruto's head. To the Uchiha, the world had tilted. He had seen Naruto take a blow that should have killed him. And yet, here the dobe was, hands behind his head, whistling a tune as if they hadn't just survived an A-rank slaughter. The gap he thought existed between them was no longer a gap. It was an abyss, and Sasuke wasn't sure which side he was standing on. "He's staring at you again," Kurama noted, his voice echoing in the vast, golden sewers of Naruto's mindscape. "The boy's pride is in tatters. If you keep outshining him like this, his desperation will make him easy prey for the snake." "I know," Naruto thought, his expression remaining neutral despite the internal dialogue. "I need to give him a path to strength that doesn't involve Orochimaru. But first, I have to deal with the old man. He won't be as easily fooled by luck this time." As the gates of Konoha appeared on the horizon, Naruto felt the familiar, dense chakra signatures of the village. It felt like coming home to a fortress that was yet to realize its walls were paper-thin. The debriefing in the Hokage's office was tense. Kakashi stood at attention, his usual lazy demeanor replaced by a professional gravity. Sakura was still somewhat subdued, the reality of the shinobi life having tempered her fangirl energy. Sasuke remained a statue of brooding silence. "An A-rank mission," Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed, the smoke from his pipe swirling around his hat like a miniature storm cloud. "You encountered Zabuza Momochi and a Hunter Nin with a Kekii Genkai. And you survived." "Naruto saved us, Gramps," Sakura blurted out, her voice filled with a genuine conviction that made Sasuke flinch. "He took a hit meant for Kakashi-sensei and the bridge builder. We thought he died." Hiruzen's sharp eyes pivoted to Naruto. "Is that so, Naruto?" "I just moved before I could think, Gramps." Naruto rubbed the back of his head, his laugh loud and jarring in the quiet room. "The wood style thing, it just kind of kicked in again. I felt really strong for a second, and then everything went dark." Hiruzen didn't look convinced. He had seen the medical report from the wave. Naruto's wounds had closed at a rate that defied even Uzumaki physiology. It smelled of Hashirama's vitality, or something even older. "Dismissed," Hiruzen said finally. "Except for Naruto. Stay behind." Once the room was empty, the Hokage stood and walked to the window, looking out over the village. "Naruto, you are a genin of Konoha, but the power you are manifesting, it is drawing eyes. Not just mine, but those of the council. And Danzo." Naruto's blood ran cold at the mention of the root leader. "Who's Danzo?" "A man who believes the end justifies the means," Hiruzen replied, turning back with a weary expression. "The Chunin exams are approaching. Shinobi from all over the world will be here. It is a time for us to show our strength, but for you it must be a time of caution. Do not reveal the full extent of your wood style unless it is a matter of life or death." "I understand, Gramps," Naruto said, his voice dropping the facade. For a moment, the two looked at each other. A tired old leader and a boy who held the future in his hands. Hiruzen felt a shiver. For a split second, he didn't see a 12-year-old. He saw a peer. The weeks leading up to the exams were a blur of official and unofficial training. Naruto knew he needed to meet a certain person before the exams began. He tracked a specific, chaotic and pervy chakra signature to the hot springs. There, perched atop a wooden fence with a telescope, was the great toad sage, Jiraiya. Naruto felt a lump in his throat that felt like a stone. Pervy sage, the man who had been more of a father to him than anyone else. The man whose death had been the catalyst for Naruto's greatest growth and his deepest pain. "Go on, brat," Kurama urged softly, "before he notices you and tries to flee." Naruto didn't sneak up. He walked right up to the fence and kicked it. "Hey, you pervert!" Jiraiya tumbled off the fence with a yelp, landing in a heap of red robes and white hair. "Gah, you brat! Do you have any idea who I am? I am the great sage of Mount Myaboku, the Toad Mountain." "You're a creep with a telescope," Naruto interrupted, crossing his arms. He let a bit of his true chakra leak out, a golden, warm pulse that mirrored the fourth Hokage's own. Jiraiya stopped his theatrics. His eyes, usually hidden behind a mask of buffoonery, sharpened instantly. He looked at Naruto, really looked at him. The resemblance to Minato was undeniable, but the energy, it was denser, richer. "You're the brat," Jiraiya muttered, standing up and dusting off his robes. "Minato's kid. And you're my godfather who's been missing for 12 years, Naruto said, his voice quiet. The silence that followed was heavy with 12 years of regret. Jiraiya looked away, his jaw tightening. "I had a job to do, kid. Tracking the Akatsuki, keeping the village safe from the shadows." "I know," Naruto said, "but the shadows are getting darker. The Chunin exams are a trap. Orochimaru is coming." Jiraiya's head snapped back, his eyes wide. "How could you possibly know that name?" "Because the wood style tells me things," Naruto lied, tapping his chest. "The trees in the forest. They hear the snakes crawling in the grass. I need you to train me, pervy sage. Not for the exams. For what comes after." Jiraiya stared at him for a long time. He saw the marks on Naruto's face, the intelligence in his eyes, and the sheer weight of his presence. "Fine, but we do it my way. And if you call me pervy sage one more time, I'm leaving." "Deal, pervy sage." While Naruto began his secret sessions with Jiraiya, learning to refine his sage-style breathing and the theory behind the Uzumaki chains, he also kept his promise to Hinata. They met every evening under the wisteria tree. Hinata was no longer the girl who fainted at his sight. She had grown stronger, her Byakugan now capable of seeing the microscopic flow of nature energy that Naruto helped her tap into. "I can feel it, Naruto-kun," she whispered one evening, her hand glowing with a soft, ethereal blue light. "The world, it's not just chakra, it's alive." "That's the secret, Hinata," Naruto said, watching her with a pride that made his heart swell. "The Hyuga only look at the internal. But when you look at the external, you don't just hit the enemy. You hit the world they stand on." Their training was interrupted by a commotion near the village center. Naruto felt a jagged, desert-dry chakra, cold, murderous, and filled with a familiar darkness. Gaara. Naruto and Hinata arrived at the scene to find Konohamaru being held by his scarf by a tall boy in a black jumpsuit with purple face paint, Kankuro. Beside him stood Temari, looking bored but wary. And there, hanging upside down from a tree, was the red-headed boy with the love kanji on his forehead. Sasuke was perched on a branch nearby, a rock in his hand, looking ready for a fight. "Put the kid down," Naruto said, his voice echoing through the street. The Sand siblings turned. Kankuro sneered. "And who are you, brat? Another loser from this weak village?" Naruto didn't look at Kankuro. He looked directly at Gaara. He saw the rings under the boy's eyes, the madness of a Jinchuriki who had never known a night of sleep. He saw his own past staring back at him. "The One Tail," Kurama growled. "Shikaku is restless. He's clawing at the boy's mind. He smells me, Naruto. He's hungry." "Gaara," Naruto said softly. Gaara's head tilted, his eyes narrowing. You know my name?" "I know your pain," Naruto said, stepping forward. Sasuke watched from the tree, his Sharingan activating instinctively. He felt the atmosphere thicken, the air becoming heavy as if a storm were about to break. "You are quiet," Gaara whispered, his sand beginning to leak from his gourd. "But your blood, it sounds like an ocean. I want to see it." "Not today," Naruto said, his hand resting on his kunai pouch. He didn't release his killing intent. Instead, he released a pulse of pure, calming with style energy, the essence of life itself. The sand near Gaara's feet settled. The boy blinked, the murderous haze in his eyes flickering for a second. He felt a strange, cooling sensation, like a shadow in the middle of a desert. "We'll see each other in the exams, Gaara of the desert," Naruto said, his blue eyes locked onto the green ones. "Try to get some sleep until then. You're going to need it." Temari and Kankuro stood frozen as Gaara simply turned and walked away. "We're leaving," the redhead muttered. Sasuke hopped down from the tree, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and curiosity. "What was that, Naruto? How did you make him stop?" Naruto just smiled, the mask of the idiot slipping back on. "I just told him he looked tired. Sasuke team, maybe you should try sleeping more too? You're getting cranky." Loser. But as Naruto watched them leave, he felt the first pieces of the Chunin exam arc falling into place. The snake was in the grass, the desert was at the gates, and the war was coming closer with every heartbeat. The atmosphere within the Academy's central testing hall was thick enough to choke a civilian. Over 100 genin from various villages, the hidden sand, the hidden grass, the hidden rain, sat in rows of long wooden desks, their collective anxiety creating a low-frequency hum that Naruto could feel in the soles of his feet. As he sat between a trembling Sakura and a stony-faced Sasuke, Naruto felt a wave of nostalgia so sharp it was almost painful. He looked at the front of the room where Ibiki Marino, the scar-faced head of Konoha's torture and interrogation force, stood like a looming gargoyle. That man radiates the scent of old blood and iron, Kurama rumbled, his consciousness shifting lazily within the seal. He's not testing their knowledge, Naruto. He's testing their spirits. Most of these whelps are already on the verge of snapping. That's the point of the first exam, Kurama, Naruto thought, his eyes scanning the room. It's about information gathering under pressure. But I'm not going to cheat like the others. I'm going to use this as a chance to map every chakra signature in this room. As Ibiki explained the rules, the point system, the mandatory 10 questions, and the threat of permanent disqualification for the entire team, Naruto closed his eyes. While Sasuke began using his Sharingan to mimic the pencil movements of a student 2 rows ahead, and Sakura tackled the complex physics equations with her own intellect, Naruto did something far more profound. He touched the floor with his heel, sending a microscopic thread of wood-style chakra into the building's foundation. Through the wood and stone, he felt them. He felt the nervous flutter of Hinata's heart a few desks over. He felt the cold, stagnant sand churn of Gaara's chakra in the back row. And then, he felt it, a signature that was wrong. It felt like cold slime and rotting scales, hidden deep within a hidden grass ninja. Orochimaru. Naruto's jaw tightened. The snake was already in the room, watching, waiting for the forest of death to begin his hunt for the Uchiha. The 10th question arrived like a death sentence. Ibiki's voice dropped into a gravelly, terrifying register as he offered the final choice. Take the question and risk being banned from the exams forever if you fail, or quit now and try again next year. The room began to empty. Teams walked out in tears, their dreams crushed by the weight of Ibiki's psychological pressure. Naruto looked at Sakura. She was trembling, her hand hovering over her desk. She was terrified for Naruto. She knew the old Naruto would never be able to answer a complex question, and she was prepared to sacrifice her own exam to keep his dream alive. Naruto didn't let her. He slammed his palm onto the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent hall. "Don't underestimate me," Naruto shouted, his voice ringing with a fierce, unyielding conviction. "I don't care if I'm stuck as a genin for the rest of my life. I'll still become Hokage. I'm not quitting, and I'm not running away." The remaining students froze. The pressure in the room seemed to shatter. Ibiki stared at Naruto for a long time, a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk tugging at the corner of his scarred mouth. "You pass," Ibiki announced. The confusion in the room was palpable. Sakura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Ibiki explained the true nature of the test, the courage to face the unknown. Naruto leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. One hurdle down. The forest of death, training ground 44, loomed like a hungry beast behind the chain-link fences. It was a 20-kilometer radius of giant trees, venomous leeches, and man-eating tigers. Anko Mitarashi, the proctor for the second stage, licked a stray drop of blood from her cheek as she handed out the scrolls. Heaven and earth. "Only half of you will make it to the tower," she chirped with a sadistic glee. "And that's if the forest doesn't eat you first. Good luck, kids." Team 7 entered through Gate 12. The moment the gates locked behind them, the atmosphere changed. The sunlight was swallowed by a canopy of interlocking branches, leaving the forest floor in a state of eternal twilight. "We need a password," Sasuke said, his voice low. He was in full combat mode now, his hand resting on his kunai pouch. He recited a long, complex poem as the code. Naruto nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. "He's coming, Naruto," Kurama warned. "The Snake Man. He's separated from his team. He's moving toward us with the speed of a falling spear." "Sakura, Sasuke, get ready," Naruto shouted suddenly, not waiting for the official encounter. A massive gust of wind tore through the clearing, carrying the scent of sulfur and wet earth. A giant snake, nearly 30 feet long, erupted from the undergrowth, its yellow eyes fixed on Naruto. Sasuke froze. The sheer killing intent radiating from the predator was unlike anything he had felt in the land of waves. It was an oppressive, crushing weight that paralyzed his muscles. Naruto didn't freeze. He blurred, appearing atop the snake's head. He didn't use a kunai. He slammed his palm down. With style, pillaging branches. Thin, needle-like roots shot from Naruto's palm, boring into the snake's skull and instantly draining its chakra. The massive beast shriveled and died in seconds, collapsing into a heap of scales and bone. Sasuke stared, his Sharingan spinning. Naruto, what was that? A distraction. A voice hissed from the shadows. A figure emerged from the trunk of a nearby tree, their skin pale and their eyes a terrifying, slitted gold. The grass ninja, Orochimaru. Such a fascinating display, the Sannin murmured, his tongue flicking out to lick his lips. A boy with the fox's soul and the first's wood. I came for the Uchiha, but perhaps you are the greater prize, Naruto Uzumaki. You're not getting either, Naruto said, his voice cold. He stepped in front of Sasuke and Sakura, his chakra beginning to flare. Not the red of the fox, but a deep, vibrant green. Orochimaru laughed, a sound like dry leaves skittering over a tombstone. Let's see if your will is as strong as your blood. The Sannin moved. He didn't use hand seals, he simply lunged. Naruto met him head-on. The clash sent a shockwave through the clearing, shattering the bark of the surrounding trees. Naruto used his Uzumaki healing and with style to harden his skin, trading blows with one of the most dangerous men in the world. Sasuke, recovering from his paralysis, launched a phoenix flower jutsu, the small fireballs weaving through the trees. Orochimaru dodged them with a serpentine grace, his neck suddenly extending like a whip, his head lunging toward Sasuke's neck. Sasuke! Sakura screamed. Naruto moved faster than Orochimaru anticipated. He used a partial Uzumaki chain, a single, glowing golden link that erupted from his chest, to snag Orochimaru's neck midair and jerk him away. Orochimaru crashed into a tree, his disguise beginning to peel away to reveal the true, snake-like face beneath. Chains? The Uzumaki secret art? You truly are a treasure chest of lost techniques. I'm the man who's going to kill you if you touch my team, Naruto said. He performed a hand seal he had learned from Jiraiya. Toad flat, shadow control jutsu. He dived into Orochimaru's shadow, attempting to pin the Sannin, but Orochimaru was a master of escape. He regurgitated a new body, leaving his old skin behind, and appeared several meters away. I've seen enough, Orochimaru whispered. The Uchiha needs a little motivation to seek me out. Before Naruto could intervene, Orochimaru performed a 5-pronged seal, slamming his fingers into Naruto's stomach, right over the 4-symbol seal. Naruto gasped as his chakra flow was suddenly disrupted. The connection to Kurama was clamped shut, and the wood-style energy became a chaotic storm in his veins. He fell to his knees, his vision blurring. Orochimaru then turned his attention to Sasuke. And for you, little Sasuke, a gift. The Sannin's neck extended once more. This time, Naruto couldn't stop him. Orochimaru's teeth sank into Sasuke's neck, leaving a black, 3-tomo mark. Gah! Sasuke screamed, clutching his neck as the cursed seal of heaven began to burn through his system. We will meet again, Naruto Uzumaki, Orochimaru hissed, his form sinking into the earth. Train hard. I want you to be a worthy sacrifice when I come for your body. The clearing went silent, save for Sasuke's agonizing screams and Sakura's sobbing. Naruto struggled to stand, his stomach burning, his chakra a jagged mess. The snake! He blocked me. Kurama's voice was a faint, distant echo. Naruto, you have to break the seal. Naruto looked at his teammates. Sasuke was unconscious, the black marks of the curse spreading across his skin. Sakura was huddled over him, terrified and alone. I'm sorry, Naruto whispered, his hand clutching his stomach. I wasn't fast enough. But as he looked at the black marks on Sasuke, a cold, focused rage began to simmer beneath the pain. Orochimaru had made his move. Now it was Naruto's turn to change the game. The Forest of Death was a cruel mistress, but in the hours following Orochimaru's departure, it became a literal nightmare. The canopy above was so thick that the passage of time was marked only by the shifting of the shadows and the drop in temperature. Naruto lay slumped against the gnarled roots of a massive oak tree, his breathing shallow and ragged. Inside his mind, everything was a chaotic, muddy blur. The five-pronged seal that Orochimaru had slammed onto his abdomen acted like a jagged wedge driven into a precision engine. It had disrupted the delicate balance between his own chakra, the fox's massive energy, and the emerald flow of the wood style. Naruto, wake up! Kurama's voice was a distorted, distant frequency, like a radio station losing power in a storm. The seal, it's twisting everything. You have to focus. I'm trying, Naruto thought, his mental voice a mere flicker. But it hurts. It feels like my coils are being tied in knots. Outside the dreamscape, Sakura Haruno sat in the center of a small, makeshift camp. She had dragged both Naruto and an unconscious, feverish Sasuke into the hollow of a tree. She was exhausted. Her hands were raw from gathering wood and water, and her eyes were red from crying. For the first time in her life, she realized that she was the only line of defense for the two boys she cared about. She looked at Sasuke, whose skin was crawling with the black, flame-like marks of the cursed seal, and then at Naruto, who looked paler than she had ever seen him. "Please," she whispered, clutching a kunai to her chest. "Please wake up, Naruto. You always have a plan. Just one more time. Please." A rustle in the bushes made her heart stop. 3 figures emerged from the gloom, wearing the forehead protectors of the hidden sound. Dosu, Zaku, and Kin. They looked at the bedraggled girl and her 2 broken teammates with a mix of boredom and sadistic pleasure. "Well, look at this," Zaku sneered, raising his hands, the air pressure tubes in his palms glinting in the dim light. "Orochimaru told us to kill the Uchiha, but the fox brat looks like he's already halfway there. This is going to be easier than I thought." Sakura stood up, her legs shaking so violently she could barely keep her balance. She thought about her long hair, about the hours she spent making sure she looked pretty for Sasuke. She thought about how many times she had hidden behind Naruto's back while he took the hits for her. No more, she thought. I am a ninja of the leaf. She reached back and, with a swift, brutal movement, sliced her long hair with the kunai. The pink locks fell to the forest floor like cherry blossoms in a gale. "You aren't touching them," she screamed, her voice cracking with a mixture of terror and newfound resolve. The battle was one-sided. Sakura used everything she had, paper bombs, traps, and even her own teeth, but the sound trio were Chunin level in everything but name. Dosu used his vibrating gauntlet to shatter her equilibrium, and Kin pulled her hair, slamming her head against the ground. Watching from the shadows of the nearby trees, Team 10, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji, and Team Guy, Lee, Niji, and Tenten, were arriving, drawn by the commotion. Rock Lee lunged into the fray, his taijutsu a whirlwind of speed, but even the lotus was not enough to overcome the sound's sonic weaponry. Deep inside his own consciousness, Naruto was staring at the 4-symbol seal. It was covered by a black, 5-pointed star of sludge. "Kurama, I can't move it. It's too heavy. Listen to me, brat." Kurama's voice suddenly boomed, clearer now as Naruto's desperation reached a peak. "You don't need to move it. You have the wood style. What does wood do to a stone in its way?" Naruto blinked. It grows through the cracks." "Exactly. Stop trying to use my chakra. Use the green. Feed the wood style into the seal. Let it consume the impurity." Naruto focused every ounce of his will on the emerald heat in his marrow. He didn't push against the 5-pronged seal. He invited the wood style to wrap around it. In the darkness of his mind, glowing green vines began to sprout, coiling around the black sludge of Orochimaru's seal. The wood style was life. Orochimaru's seal was a corruption. Crack. Outside, Naruto's body suddenly arched. A massive pulse of pure, vibrant chakra erupted from him, clearing the mist and knocking the sound genin back by several feet. Naruto's eyes snapped open. They weren't blue, and they weren't the slitted red of the fox. They were a brilliant, terrifying gold, the eyes of a sage beginning to manifest. He stood up. He didn't look at the sound genin. He looked at Sakura, who was beaten, bruised, and bleeding. He looked at the hair she had cut to protect him. A cold, terrifying calm settled over the clearing. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Sakura-chan," Naruto said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made Shikamaru, watching from the bushes, feel like he couldn't breathe. "Who did this to you?" Zaku laughed, though it sounded forced. "I did, you little—" Naruto didn't even seem to move. He simply appeared in front of Zaku. He didn't use a jutsu. He grabbed Zaku by the shoulders. With style, piercing brambles. Tiny, thorn-like splinters of wood erupted from Naruto's palms, driving directly into Zaku's arms, specifically targeting the air pressure tubes. The wood didn't just block the tubes. It grew inside them, shattering the metal and bone from the inside out. Zaku's scream echoed through the forest of death, a sound of pure agony as his primary weapons were destroyed in a heartbeat. Naruto turned his gaze toward Dosu and Kin. The gold in his eyes was swirling now, a mixture of his own will and the raw power of the world itself. "Take your scroll and leave," Naruto said. "If I see your faces again before the tower, I won't be this gentle." Dosu, a strategist by nature, realized in an instant that they were standing before something that wasn't human. He grabbed the screaming Zaku and the stunned Kin, vanishing into the forest without a word. The adrenaline began to fade. Naruto's eyes bled back to blue, and he felt a wave of exhaustion hit him. But he didn't fall. He walked over to Sakura and placed a hand on her shoulder. The emerald heat flowed from him into her, knitting her wounds and soothing her pain with his Uzumaki healing. "You were amazing, Sakura-chan," he whispered. "You kept us safe. Thank you." Sakura looked up at him, her eyes wide. She saw the boy she had always teased, but she also saw the warrior he had become. She realized then that Naruto hadn't been lucky in the land of waves. He had been holding back. At that moment, Sasuke groaned. The black marks of the cursed seal began to recede, leaving him gasping for air. He looked at Naruto, then at the destruction in the clearing, and finally at Sakura's short hair. "What happened?" Sasuke rasped. Naruto didn't answer. He looked toward the center of the forest where the tower stood. He could feel Orochimaru watching from afar, and he could feel the other teams closing in. "We're going to the tower," Naruto said, his voice firm. "And then, we're going to show the world what Team 7 can really do." The final trek to the center of the Forest of Death was a study in grim efficiency. Team 7 moved through the undergrowth with a renewed sense of purpose, though the dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Sakura, with her jaggedly cut hair, moved with a steadier hand on her kunai. Sasuke was silent, his neck still burning from the dormant embers of the cursed seal, his eyes constantly darting toward Naruto. He was searching for the boy who had unleashed that golden pressure in the clearing, but all he saw was Naruto's orange back and the occasional, annoying whistle. "They're looking at you like you're a ghost, Naruto," Kurama hummed, his voice now crisp and clear since the wood style had purged Orochimaru's interference. "The girl is curious, but the Uchiha, he's terrified. He knows you're hiding a mountain behind a molehill." Let them wonder, Naruto thought. The less they know about the sage influence for now, the safer they are. If Sasuke thinks he can bridge the gap with the cursed seal, he'll be lost. I have to show him that true strength comes from within, not from a snake's bite. They encountered Yakushi Kabuto near the perimeter of the tower. To the others, he was a helpful senior student who had failed the exams multiple times. To Naruto, he was a walking corpse, a collection of stolen identities and medical treachery. Naruto felt the oily, surgical chill of Kabuto's chakra and had to physically restrain himself from using a Rasengan then and there. "You guys look like you've been through hell," Kabuto said, his glasses glinting. He offered them advice on the scrolls, acting as the perfect mentor. Naruto played along, offering a wide, fake grin, while his with style sensors mapped the hidden ink and specialized medical tools Kabuto carried under his gear. When they finally entered the tower and opened the scrolls, Iruka-sensei appeared in a puff of smoke. Seeing the pride and relief in Iruka's eyes almost made Naruto break character. "You made it?" Iruka breathed, looking at their bedraggled but determined faces. He noticed Sakura's hair and the exhaustion in Sasuke's eyes, but he lingered on Naruto. There was a change in the boy, a stillness that Iruka couldn't quite place. "I'm glad you're safe. You've passed the second stage." Iruka explained the significance of the poem on the wall, emphasizing the balance between heaven and earth, mind and body. Naruto listened, but his focus was on the massive chakra signatures gathering in the hall beyond. The third stage was not a mission, it was a tournament. The grand hall of the tower was a cavernous space of cold stone and high rafters. The surviving genin, drastically fewer than those who had entered the forest, stood in rows before the third Hokage and a line of Jonin mentors. Naruto's gaze swept across the room. He saw Gaara, standing perfectly still, the sand in his gourd vibrating with a suppressed hunger. He saw Hinata, standing with Team 8, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment. He sent her a small, supportive pulse of chakra, a secret well done that made her blush and straighten her posture. Hiruzen Sarutobi stepped forward, his voice echoing through the chamber. He spoke of the history of the exams, of how they were a microcosm of war, a way for nations to demonstrate power without full-scale conflict. But then came the twist. Because too many had survived the forest, a set of preliminary matches would take place immediately. The groans of the exhausted genin were ignored. Hayate Gecko, the sickly-looking proctor with a persistent cough, pointed to an electronic scoreboard on the wall. Individual combat, Hayate rasped. To the death or until I intervene. If you want to quit, do it now. The names began to spin. Sasuke was first, up against Yoroi Akato. Naruto watched as Sasuke struggled to contain the cursed seal, eventually winning with his lion combo. It was a raw, desperate victory that left the Uchiha gasping on the floor. Kakashi quickly pulled him away for a sealing ritual, leaving Naruto and Sakura alone on the balcony. After a few more matches, including Hinata's heart-wrenching loss to Neji, which Naruto watched with white-knuckled fury, promising himself he would break the destiny of the branch house. The board spun again. Naruto Uzumaki versus Kiba Inuzuka. Finally, Kiba shouted, leaping over the railing with Akamaru perched on his head. I was hoping I'd get the dead last. Sorry, Naruto, but your luck just ran out. Naruto hopped down, his movements intentionally clumsy. He stumbled slightly upon landing, earning a round of snickers from the audience. He thinks you're a joke, Naruto, Kurama chuckled. Show him the punchline. Not yet, Naruto thought. Kiba is fast, but he's predictable. I need to win this in a way that looks like a fluke. If I use with style or a Rasengan here, I'll have the entire council demanding I be turned into a weapon. Start, Hayate commanded. Kiba didn't hesitate. Man-beast clone. He fed Akamaru a soldier pill, and the small dog transformed into a feral, red-furred copy of Kiba. They both dropped to all fours, their fingernails elongating into claws. Fong over Fong. The duo spun into twin horizontal tornadoes of shredding force, tearing across the arena toward Naruto. The speed was impressive for a genin, the wind pressure cracking the stone floor. Naruto didn't dodge. He stood his ground, his hands moving into a familiar seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. A dozen Narutos appeared, but instead of attacking, they simply scattered in a chaotic, screaming mess. Wah! Too fast. Help! Kiba's twin drills tore through the clones, poofing them into smoke, but the sheer volume of clones obstructed his vision. Naruto was using the smoke to map Kiba's momentum. He could see the lines of the attack, the way Kiba tilted his shoulder before a turn. As Kiba circled back for another pass, the real Naruto ducked behind a pillar. He didn't hide. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a smoke bomb and a length of wire. This is for all those times you called me a loser, Naruto thought with a smirk. The next time Kiba spun past, Naruto didn't run. He threw the smoke bomb directly into the path of the spin. The sudden explosion of thick, gray soot was sucked into Kiba's vortex, blinding him and Akamaru. Dogs rely on scent, and Naruto had laced the smoke with a pungent, distracting pepper extract. Gah! My nose! Kiba yelled, his spin faltering. Naruto emerged from the smoke, but he wasn't running. He was crawling on the floor, making a series of loud, frantic noises. Where is he? I can't see anything. Kiba, hearing the noise, lunged blindly toward the sound. But Naruto had used a transformation jutsu on a heavy piece of rubble, making it look and sound like him. Kiba slammed into the rock with a sickening thud. While Kiba was dazed, Naruto appeared behind Akamaru. He didn't hurt the dog. He used a gentle, sleep-inducing pressure point strike he'd studied from the Hyuga archives. Akamaru poofed back into his puppy form and fell fast asleep. Akamaru! Kiba roared, his eyes bloodshot from the pepper. He charged Naruto, throwing a desperate punch. Naruto took the hit. He intentionally let Kiba's fist connect with his jaw, sending him skidding across the floor. He needed to look like he was struggling. "Is that all you got, loser?" Kiba sneered, though he was panting. Naruto stood up, wiping a bit of blood from his lip. He looked tired, his breathing heavy. "I'm not done yet." He rushed Kiba, swinging a wild, uncoordinated haymaker. Kiba easily dodged and countered with a kick to Naruto's ribs. They traded blows for several minutes. A messy, low-level brawl that had the Jonin above yawning. Except for Kakashi and Jiraiya. Kakashi, having returned from sealing Sasuke's mark, narrowed his eye. He noticed that every time Naruto was hit, he took it in a way that minimized damage, and every time Naruto missed, his footwork was placing him in a better tactical position. "He's playing with him," Kakashi realized with a jolt of alarm. "He's dragging the fight out to exhaust Kiba while making it look like a struggle." Finally, Naruto saw his opening. He stumbled forward, falling right into Kiba's space. As Kiba raised his hand for a finishing blow, Naruto released a small, concentrated burst of chakra from his feet, causing a slip that sent him headfirst into Kiba's stomach. But as he made contact, Naruto's hand brushed Kiba's leg. He planted a tiny, microscopic wood style seed, a parasitic spore that drained a massive amount of stamina in a single burst. Kiba suddenly felt like the world had turned to lead. His legs buckled, his vision swimming. He looked down at Naruto, who was lying on top of him, looking just as exhausted. I won't lose," Kiba gasped, before his eyes rolled back and he lost consciousness from sheer exhaustion and the secret drain. Naruto lay there for a second, then slowly, painfully, climbed to his feet. He looked like a man who had barely survived a hurricane. "Winner, Naruto Uzumaki," A8 announced. The crowd was silent for a beat before a few scattered cheers broke out. Sakura was screaming his name from the balcony, and even Lee was giving a thumbs up. Naruto limped back toward the stairs, playing the part of the battered victor. As he reached the balcony, he walked past Niji Hyuga. The genius of the branch house didn't even look at him. "Luck won't save you in the finals, loser. Destiny has already decided your end." Naruto stopped. He didn't look at Niji. He looked at the ground where Hinata had bled earlier. "Destiny is just a word people use when they're too scared to change," Naruto said. His voice was no longer the loud, obnoxious yell of a child. It was the cold, resonant tone of a man who had changed the past. "Watch closely, Niji. I'm going to break your destiny into so many pieces you won't even recognize the shards." Niji turned, his Byakugan flaring instinctively, but Naruto was already walking away toward the medical bay to recover. "You're getting cocky, brat," Kurama teased. "I'm just getting started," Naruto replied. The preliminaries ended shortly after, with the final list of competitors set for the main tournament in 1 month's time. Naruto, Sasuke, Gaara, Niji, Shikamaru, and the others were dismissed. But as Naruto left the tower, he didn't head home. He headed toward the dense woods near the Hokage monument. He had 1 month. 1 month to master the Hiraishin anchoring and to begin the true integration of the sage style with his wood style. The snake was in the grass, the sand was at the gates, and the war was coming. But Naruto Uzumaki was no longer just a boy. He was a storm in human form, and the world was about to find out exactly what happened when a storm decided to protect its home. The month-long reprieve before the final rounds of the Chunin exams was a period of frantic preparation for some and agonizing tension for others. While the village buzzed with the arrival of foreign dignitaries and the construction of the tournament arena, Naruto Uzumaki vanished. To the prying eyes of the ANBU and the gossip of his peers, he was simply somewhere training with that pervy old man. In reality, Naruto was rewriting the limits of his physical and spiritual existence. Deep within the mountains surrounding the Land of Fire, in a secluded clearing where the air was thick with the scent of pine and ancient stone, Naruto sat perfectly still atop a jagged spire of rock. "Your breathing is shallow, Naruto," Kurama's voice resonated. No longer a roar, but a steady, deep hum. "The nature energy is like a tide. If you don't give it space to flow, it will drown you." "I know," Naruto thought, his brow slick with sweat despite the mountain chill. "It's different this time. The wood style acting as a bridge makes the intake faster, but it's harder to balance the stillness of the sage with the growth of the wood. Since his return to the past, Naruto had realized that his body was a unique laboratory. The Hashirama cells weren't just a bloodline, they were a biological amplifier for senjutsu. Where other sages had to sit still for hours to gather natural energy, Naruto's skin, infused with the essence of the great forest, was practically drinking the world around him. He opened his eyes. The cerulean blue was gone, replaced by a brilliant gold with horizontal bar-like pupils. The orange pigment around his eyes was sharper, more vibrant than it had been in his previous life. He stood up, and for a moment, the very trees in the clearing seemed to lean toward him in a silent, leafy salute. "Jiraiya-sensei, I'm ready." From a nearby branch, Jiraiya hopped down, his expression uncharacteristically grave. He had spent the last 3 weeks watching this boy, his godson, do things that should have been impossible. He had seen Naruto master the basic summoning jutsu in a single afternoon, and then, more terrifyingly, he had seen the boy begin to develop the Hiraishin formulas in the dirt during lunch breaks. "You're a monster, kid," Jiraiya muttered, crossing his arms. "I've seen geniuses. I taught your father. But you're playing a game I don't fully understand. That sage style you're using, it's not just the toad's way. It's deeper. It's more primal." "It's the world's way," Naruto said, his voice carrying a resonance that made the birds in the trees go silent. "The war that's coming isn't just about ninja, Jiraiya-sensei. It's about the soul of the planet. If I can't speak the language of the forest, I can't protect it." Jiraiya sighed, reaching into his vest to pull out a small scroll. "The old man tells me the sand is acting strange. Orochimaru's influence is everywhere. He's worried about the exams, but he's more worried about you. If you show this kind of power in the arena, the other villages will see it as an act of aggression. A Jinchuriki with the first's power? It's a declaration of war." "Then let them see," Naruto said, his gaze fixed on the distant silhouette of Konoha. "I'm tired of hiding. If I have to be a deterrent to keep the peace, then I'll be the biggest deterrent they've ever seen." While the days were consumed by the grueling demands of senjutsu, the evenings belonged to a different kind of growth. Every few days, Naruto would slip back into the village, moving like a ghost through the shadows to meet Hinata. They met at their wisteria tree, but the training had evolved. Naruto was no longer just teaching her to sense energy. He was teaching her to reclaim her legacy. "The Hyuga call it the gentle fist," Naruto said, standing behind her as she moved through her katas. "But nature isn't always gentle, Hinata. It's relentless. It's the root that shatters the stone." He placed his hands over hers, guiding her palms. Because of his sage mode, he could see the tenketsu of the very air. "Don't just hit the point. Flow through it. Imagine your chakra isn't a needle, but a river." Hinata's confidence had blossomed like the flowers she tended. Her stutter was nearly gone, replaced by a quiet, fierce determination. She had begun to develop a variation of the twin lion fists years ahead of schedule, her chakra taking the shape of flickering, translucent wolves rather than lions, a reflection of her own internal spirit. "Naruto-kun," she whispered during a break, their shoulders brushing as they sat on the grass. "Niji-Nizan. He's been watching me. He's angry. He says that I'm trying to defy my fate, and that the higher I climb, the harder I'll fall." Naruto looked at her, the moonlight reflecting in his eyes. He reached out and tucked a stray strand of her dark hair behind her ear. "Niji is trapped in a birdcage of his own making, Hinata. He thinks the bars are the world, but they're just shadows. In the finals, I'm going to show him that the sky is open. And you're going to be the one who teaches the Hyuga that the branch is just as vital as the root." Hinata looked at him, and for a moment, the idiot Naruto was nowhere to be found. She saw the man he was becoming, a leader, a protector, a king. She leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart full. "I believe you." As the month drew to a close, the atmosphere in Konoha turned electric and toxic. Naruto, moving through the streets under a transformation jutsu, saw the signs of the conspiracy everywhere. He saw the hidden sand ninja whispering in the shadows, their chakra signatures cold and jagged. He saw the hidden sound scouts marking the structural weaknesses of the village walls. He also found Sasuke. The Uchiha was training with Kakashi in the high cliffs, obsessed with mastering the Chidori. Naruto watched from afar, seeing the way the cursed seal occasionally flickered on Sasuke's neck, a black stain on his soul. He's chasing lightning, Naruto thought sadly, but he's forgotten the earth beneath his feet. On the final night before the tournament, Naruto sat alone on the head of the fourth Hokage. The village below was a sea of lights, a peaceful facade over a powder keg. "Tomorrow it begins," Kurama said, his voice heavy with the weight of history. "The snake will strike, the sand will bury, and the old man will likely fall, Naruto. Are you prepared for that?" Naruto looked down at his father's stone face. He thought about Hiruzen Sarutobi, the man who had failed him in his first life by letting him grow up lonely, but who had also protected the village with everything he had. "I can't save everyone, Kurama. If I change the timeline too much, I lose my advantage. But I won't let the village burn. Not this time." He reached into his pouch and pulled out a single, three-pronged kunai. It was blank, lacking the formula, but he began to carve into the metal with a focused, glowing fingertip. He wasn't just making a weapon. He was making an anchor. "Tonight, I set the marks," Naruto whispered. Throughout the night, shadow clones of Naruto moved through the village. One marked the Hokage's office. One marked the hospital. One marked the Hyuga compound. And one, the most important, marked the center of the arena. The Hiraishin wasn't ready for combat jumping yet, but for a Redux Naruto, it would serve as a lifeline. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Naruto stood up. He removed his goggles and replaced them with his forehead protector, tying the blue cloth tight. He shed the idiot mask, his expression settling into a cold, diamond-hard focus. The Chunin exams were no longer a test. They were the first move in a Grand Master's game. "Let's go, Kurama. It's time to break destiny." The air in the Konoha Coliseum was thick with the roar of thousands. It was a sound like crashing surf, a mixture of anticipation, nationalistic pride, and the frantic betting of the civilian elite. High above the stadium floor, in the ornate Kage's box, the third Hokage sat beside the fourth Kazekage, or rather, the man Naruto knew was Orochimaru in a stolen skin. Naruto stood in the center of the arena alongside the other finalists. He felt the weight of 1,000 eyes, but his focus was internal. He was listening to the earth beneath his sandals. Through his sage-style connection, he could feel the tremors of movement in the tunnels beneath the stadium. The sound and sand forces were already in position, waiting for the signal. "The snake is watching you from the high seat, Naruto." Kurama's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. "He's tasting the air, trying to figure out why the fox feels so quiet. Don't give him a reason to strike before the play begins." "I'm keeping the fox's chakra tucked away, Kurama," Naruto thought. "Today, Neji is going to fight the Uzumaki and the sage. Nothing more." Genma Shiranui, the new proctor, stepped forward, a sunbon needle clicking against his teeth. He looked at the two combatants remaining in the center of the ring, the dead last and the genius. First match, Naruto Uzumaki versus Neji Hyuga. All others, clear the arena. As Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Gaara retreated to the spectator stands, the stadium fell into a hushed, expectant silence. Neji stood several paces away, his posture perfect, his white eyes cold and devoid of empathy. He looked at Naruto not as a rival, but as an annoyance to be removed. "You have the eyes of a man who thinks he has won," Neji said, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "But destiny is a fixed star, Naruto. You were born a failure just as I was born to the branch house. No amount of struggling will change the mark on my forehead, or the lack of talent in your blood." Naruto didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He simply stood there, his hands hanging loosely at his sides. "You talk a lot about stars, Neji, but you've spent so much time looking at the sky that you've forgotten how to feel the ground you're standing on. Be a Kugen." The veins around Neji's eyes pulsed with chakra, his vision expanding to nearly 360 degrees. He mapped Naruto's chakra system, searching for the massive, chaotic reserves of the Nine Tails. But he stopped, his brow furrowing in confusion. Naruto's chakra wasn't a roaring ocean. It was a calm, crystalline stream, perfectly balanced with a strange, golden energy he had never seen before. "Start," Genma shouted. Neji blurred. He moved with the legendary speed of the gentle fist. His fingers extended like spear points. 2 palms. For palms. Naruto didn't retreat. He stepped into Niji's guard. To the audience, it looked like suicide. But Naruto was moving with the economy of a sage. He wasn't dodging, he was flowing. Every time Niji's palm struck out, Naruto's body shifted by a fraction of an inch, the blow whistling past his skin. "Why won't you stay still?" Niji hissed, his strikes becoming faster, more desperate. 8 palms. 16 palms. Naruto's hands remained open. He wasn't using the interceptor fist or the standard academy taijutsu. He was using a variation of the Toad Kata, but instead of using invisible air pressure, he was using the wood style to harden the air directly around his body. "My destiny is mine to write, Niji," Naruto said, his voice a calm anchor in the center of Niji's storm. "And right now, I'm writing a chapter where you realize you're just a boy in a cage you built yourself." Niji growled, his chakra flaring. 8 trigrams. 64 palms. The air in the arena seemed to solidify as Niji unleashed his ultimate technique. He moved in a circle, his strikes a blur of light. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Every single strike landed, or so it seemed. To the spectators, Niji's fingers were burying themselves into Naruto's chest, shoulders, and abdomen, shutting down his tenketsu. Sakura screamed from the stands, and even Hayashi Hyuga, watching from the VIP section, nodded in grim approval. 64 palms. Niji shouted, landing the final blow to Naruto's solar plexus. Naruto didn't fly back. He didn't collapse. He stood perfectly still, Niji's fingers still pressed against his chest. "Is that all?" Naruto asked. Niji's eyes widened. He looked at his fingers, then at Naruto's chakra system through his Byakugan. His jaw dropped. The tenketsu weren't closed. It was as if he had been striking a tree. The chakra had simply been absorbed by Naruto's skin, redistributed into the earth. You didn't block them," Niji breathed, stepping back in terror. "You ate them." "I told you, Niji," Naruto said, his eyes beginning to glow with a faint, golden hue. "The ground is stronger than the sky." Naruto performed a single hand seal. Wood style, roots of truth. The stone floor of the arena shattered. Dozens of thin, iron-hard roots erupted from the ground, not to strike Niji, but to form a cage around him. They twisted into the shape of a bird, the very bird Niji always saw in his visions of fate. But this bird was made of solid oak, its wings pinning Niji's arms to his sides. "This is your destiny, Niji?" Naruto said, walking toward the trapped boy. "It's a cage of your own making. You think the seal on your forehead makes you a slave? My mother's clan was wiped out for their power. My father died to save a village that hated me for what he put inside me. We all have marks, Niji, but a mark is just ink. Your spirit is what chooses the path." Naruto reached out and touched the center of the roots. The wood began to glow with a soft, healing green light. The Uzumaki healing energy flowed into Niji, not to hurt him, but to soothe the years of pent-up rage and trauma in his coils. "Look at the sky now, Niji," Naruto whispered, not as a bird looking for an exit, but as a man who owns the horizon. With a final surge of chakra, Naruto shattered the wooden bird. The explosion of splinters was harmless, falling like snow around the arena. Niji fell to his knees, gasping, his Byakugan deactivating. He looked up at Naruto, and for the first time in his life, the genius saw the world clearly. I lost," Niji whispered. "No," Naruto said, offering a hand to pull him up. "You just woke up." The stadium was silent for a heartbeat before erupting into a deafening roar. They had expected a brawl. They had witnessed a miracle. High above, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes, his grip tightening on the Kazekage's fan. It was more refined than Yamato's. Felt ancient. "I must have that boy." But as Gama raised Naruto's hand in victory, the sky suddenly turned dark. White feathers began to drift down from the rafters, a mass-scale genjutsu. "It's starting, Naruto," Kurama hissed. An explosion rocked the Hokage's box. A purple barrier erupted, trapping the third Hokage with the traitor. Naruto didn't look at the box. He looked at the arena entrance where the sand and sound ninja were pouring in. He reached into his pouch and pulled out the 3-pronged kunai he had marked. "Niji, get Hinata and the others to the hospital," Naruto commanded, his voice the tone of a general. "The village is under attack." Niji didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He simply bowed. Understood, Naruto-sama. Naruto turned toward the center of the chaos. He felt the massive, desert-dry chakra of the One Tail beginning to erupt in the distance. All right, Kurama, Naruto said, his golden eyes flashing. The warm-up is over. Let's show them why the Uzumaki were feared. The air in the Colosseum transformed instantly from the electric thrill of sport to the suffocating chill of a war zone. The white feathers of the Temple of Nirvana Jutsu continued to drift like cursed snow, lulling thousands of civilians into an artificial slumber. High above, the violet flames of the Four Violet Flames formation barrier flickered with a malevolent light, sealing the third Hokage within a rooftop arena with his greatest failure. Naruto stood in the center of the stadium floor, his golden sage eyes scanning the chaos with a cold, veteran precision. To the panicked genin and the overwhelmed chunin around him, the world was ending. To Naruto, it was a tactical board he had studied 1,000 times. The Uchiha has already bolted. Kurama's voice vibrated with a predatory edge. He's chasing the Sand siblings into the Treeline. He's obsessed, Naruto. The cursed seal is singing to him, fueled by his jealousy of your match with the Hyuga. I can't let him face Gaara alone, Naruto thought, his fingers tightening around a three-pronged kunai. In the old timeline, they barely survived. With Orochimaru having tinkered with Gaara's seal during the month break, the Shikaku will be even more unstable. Sakura, Shikamaru. Naruto's voice cut through the sound of clashing steel as Sound Ninja began to drop from the rafters. Wake up! He performed a quick, localized release of chakra, snapping his teammates out of the Jinjutsu. Sakura blinked, her eyes widening as she saw a Sound Ninja lunging at her with a serrated blade. Before she could scream, a thick wooden stake erupted from the arena floor, impaling the assassin mid-air. No time for fear, Sakura-chan, Naruto said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Take Shikamaru and Pakin. Follow Sasuke's scent. Do not engage Gaara until I get there. Do you understand? Sakura looked at the wooden stake, then at Naruto's glowing eyes. She didn't argue. She saw the authority of a commander in his gaze. Understood. As they vanished into the forest, Naruto turned his gaze toward the Hokage's rooftop. He could see the silhouettes of Hiruzen and Orochimaru through the purple haze of the barrier. He felt the ancient, heavy chakra of the first and second Hokages being pulled from the Pure Land, the Edo Tensei. I'm sorry, Gramps, Naruto whispered, but if I break that barrier now, Orochimaru will flee, and the snake will remain in the grass. This tragedy has to play out to forge the village's resolve. But I won't let you die alone. Naruto performed a single hand seal, focusing on the marker he had placed in the Hokage's office weeks ago. Hiration! In a yellow flash that would have made the fourth Hokage proud, Naruto vanished. He reappeared inside the administrative building, bypassing the chaos in the streets. He didn't stop to fight the invaders. He moved toward the village's central irrigation and forest reserves. He slammed his palms onto the damp earth of the village center. With style, great forest wall. Konoha didn't just have walls of stone. It now had walls of living, breathing oak. Massive, interlocking trunks erupted from the soil around the hospital and the civilian shelters, creating a biological fortress that the Sound Ninja's blades couldn't pierce. It was a massive drain on his chakra, but with the sage-style drinking energy from the surrounding forests, Naruto was acting as a living conduit. Meanwhile, deep in the forest of death, the air was being choked by the scent of sand and sulfur. Sasuke Uchiha was panting, his left arm crackling with the remnants of a Chidori. Before him, Gaara was no longer a boy. Half of his body was covered in the coarse, sand-colored hide of the One Tail. A massive, bloated arm of sand gripped a tree trunk, crushing the wood into splinters. Blood! Gaara rasped, his lone human eye twitching with a manic intensity. I need your blood to prove I exist. Shut up, Sasuke roared, the black marks of the cursed seal beginning to crawl up his neck once more. He lunged, his speed bolstered by the dark chakra, but the sand was a sentient wall. Gaara's sand arm slammed into Sasuke, throwing him through 3 trees. Sasuke coughed up blood, his vision swimming. The cursed seal was agonizing, a cold fire that demanded he give in to the hatred. As Gaara prepared to crush the Uchiha, a golden flash cut through the canopy. Naruto appeared between them, his hand extended. He didn't use a kunai. He caught Gaara's massive sand claw with his bare hand, the wood-style energy in his skin instantly petrifying the sand upon contact. "That's enough, Gaara," Naruto said. Gaara's head tilted, a guttural growl escaping his throat. "The one with the ocean chakra, I will kill you first." "You're not killing anyone," Naruto said. He looked back at Sasuke, who was staring at him with a mixture of shock and fury. "Sasuke, get Sakura and Shikamaru out of here. This isn't a fight for a genin." "Don't look down on me," Sasuke screamed, trying to stand. "I'm an Uchiha. You're a comrade," Naruto interrupted, his voice softening. "And right now your job is to protect our team. Let me handle the monster." Sasuke froze. The word comrade hit him harder than the sand had. He looked at Naruto, standing fearlessly before a literal demon, and finally, his pride broke just enough to let him nod. He grabbed the unconscious Sakura and retreated. Naruto turned back to Gaara. The transformation was nearly complete. The Shikaku was emerging, a towering beast of sand and seals. "He's going to use the feigning sleep technique, Naruto," Kurama warned. "If the boy falls asleep, the Tanuki will have full control. You'll have to hit the boy to wake him up, but that sand shield is reinforced with sage tier mineral density." "Then I'll just have to use something bigger," Naruto replied. Naruto performed a rapid series of hand seals. He didn't call upon the fox's red chakra. He pulled the deep, emerald energy of the forest into his palms, mixing it with the golden sage energy. Wood style, wood dragon jutsu. A massive, serpentine dragon made of ancient, gnarled wood erupted from the forest floor. It roared with a sound like grinding tectonic plates, its body coiling around the emerging Shikaku. The wood dragon's special ability, the power to suppress and drain tailed beast chakra, began to work instantly. The sand of Gaara's transformation started to crumble, the chakra being sucked into the dragon's wooden scales. What is this?" Gaara screamed, his human form emerging from the head of the crumbling sand beast. "Why can't I move?" "Because the world doesn't want you to be a monster, Gaara," Naruto shouted, leaping onto the head of his wood dragon. He soared through the air, closing the distance. "You've been alone for so long that you think the only way to feel is through pain. But I'm here. I'm like you. And I'm telling you, you don't have to be alone anymore." Naruto didn't hit him with a fist. He hit him with the Uzumaki sealing palm, slamming his hand onto Gaara's chest. A brilliant blue seal flared to life, temporarily reinforcing the seal on Gaara's stomach and forcing the Shikaku back into the darkness. The sand collapsed. The forest went silent. Naruto caught the falling, unconscious Gaara and landed gently on the grass. He looked toward the village, where the purple barrier was finally shattering. He felt a massive, sorrowful dip in the village's collective chakra. Hiruzen Sarutobi was gone. Naruto closed his eyes, a single tear tracing a path through the sage markings on his face. He had saved the village, he had saved Gaara, and he had kept his team alive. But the cost of the timeline was still paid in blood. "Rest now, Gramps," Naruto whispered. "I'll take it from here." The rain did not feel like a natural occurrence. It felt like the village itself was weeping. Konoha was draped in a suffocating gray, the smoke from the final fires of the invasion mixing with the mist to create a ghostly shroud. Black umbrellas dotted the cemetery like a sea of mourning beetles. At the front of the crowd, Naruto stood with Team 7, his orange jumpsuit replaced by a somber black suit that felt heavy on his shoulders. Not from the fabric, but from the memories it carried. He watched as the portraits of the fallen were placed upon the memorial. Hiruzen Sarutobi's face looked back at him, calm and wise, a man who had lived through 3 wars only to be slain by the student he had loved most. "The cycle of hatred continues, Naruto." Kurama's voice was uncharacteristically quiet, echoing through the golden chambers of the seal. "The old man is gone, and the vultures are already circling. Can you feel them? The greed in the council's hearts? The fear in the streets?" "I feel it," Naruto thought, his gaze fixed on the 3rd stone. "But I also feel the resolve. Look at Konohamaru. Look at Iruka. The will of fire isn't an ember anymore. It's a furnace now." Naruto glanced sideways at Sasuke. The Uchiha was a statue of ice. His eyes were not on the Hokage's portrait, but on his own hands. Sasuke had seen Naruto suppress a tailed beast with a dragon made of wood. He had seen a power that made his Chidori look like a child's toy. The jealousy was there, but it was being eclipsed by a darker, more predatory curiosity. The cursed seal on his neck pulsed with a dull, purple light that only Naruto's sage eyes could see. The days following the funeral were a whirlwind of political maneuvering. With the Hokage seat empty, the village was vulnerable. Naruto spent his time moving between the hospital, where he used his Uzumaki healing to quietly accelerate the recovery of the wounded, and the training grounds. He knew who was coming. He knew the exact moment the air in the village would turn cold and heavy with the scent of crows and salt. It happened on a Tuesday. Naruto was sitting at Ichiraka Ramen, staring at a bowl of miso pork that had gone cold. Tucci and Ayam were working with a subdued energy, their usual cheer dampened by the mourning period. Suddenly, the curtain moved. Two men entered, wearing long black cloaks adorned with crimson clouds. Their wide straw hats with jingle bells cast deep shadows over their faces. "They're here," Kurama hissed, his chakra coiling like a serpent. "The Uchiha prodigy and the shark of the mist. Be careful, brat. That sword, Samahata, will eat your wood-style chakra for breakfast if you give it a chance." Naruto didn't reach for a kunai. He didn't even look up. "It's a bit early for lunch, isn't it? The ramen is better when the sun is higher." The man with the scarred forehead protector and the pale, shark-like eyes, Kisame Hashigaki, chuckled, a sound like sandpaper on bone. "He's a bold one, Itachi. He doesn't even look afraid." Itachi Uchiha lifted his hat. His Sharingan was already active, the three tomo spinning slowly. He looked at Naruto, and for a second the world seemed to slow down. Naruto saw the fatigue in Itachi's eyes, the terminal illness already beginning to gnaw at his lungs, the crushing weight of a double life that had forced him to butcher his own kin. "Naruto Uzumaki," Itachi said, his voice a calm, flat line. "You are coming with us." "I don't think so," Naruto said, finally turning his head. He didn't use the idiot mask. He met Itachi's gaze with his own cerulean eyes, which slowly bled into the golden bars of the sage style. "And if you're looking for Sasuke, he's at the training grounds. But I wouldn't recommend it. He's a bit moody today." Kisame's grin widened, his hand gripping the hilt of the massive, wrapped sword on his back. "A sage? At the sage? Maybe this won't be as boring as I thought." Before Kisame could draw his blade, a flurry of white hair and red robes appeared at the entrance of the shop. Jiraiya stood there, a look of uncharacteristic fury on his face. "Akatsuki," Jiraiya spat the name. "You've got a lot of nerve coming into this village while the graves are still fresh." "Jiraiya of the Sannin," Itachi noted, his expression unchanged. "We are not here for a war. Only the Jinchuriki." "Then you're leaving empty-handed," Naruto said, standing up. He performed a single hand seal, and the floorboards of the ramen shop groaned. Small, needle-like roots of wood style erupted around Kisame's feet, pinning his sandals to the wood. "Konoha has lost enough. I'm not letting you take anything else." Itachi's eyes narrowed. He saw the wood style, the legendary power of the first. He saw the golden eyes of a sage. He realized in that moment that the Naruto Uzumaki his brother had described was a fiction. This was a man. "Kisame, we are leaving," Itachi commanded. "What? But Itachi." "We are outnumbered, and the reinforcements are arriving," Itachi said, his gaze flickering toward the rooftops where Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma were converging. "This was a reconnaissance mission. We have seen what we needed to see." With a swirl of crows and a sudden puff of smoke, the two Akatsuki members vanished. Naruto stood in the middle of the street, his heart hammering. He had faced them. He hadn't fought, but he had stood his ground. He felt a hand on his shoulder. "You did well, Naruto," Jiraiya said, his voice low, "but they'll be back. And next time, they won't come in the daylight." "I know," Naruto said. "That's why we need to find her. The only one who can lead this village now." "Tsunade," Jiraiya sighed. "Yeah, we head out tomorrow. Pack your bags, kid. It's a long walk to the gambling halls." As Naruto walked home to pack, he saw Sasuke standing in the shadow of an alleyway. The Uchiha's face was pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and obsession. He had seen the crows. He knew his brother had been there. "He was here," Sasuke whispered, his voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me? Because you aren't ready, Sasuke, Naruto said, not stopping. You're chasing a ghost with a broken lantern. If you want to face Itachi, stop looking for hatred. Start looking for strength. Sasuke watched him go, his fist clenching so hard his knuckles turned white. The cursed seal flared, a hot, agonizing brand on his skin. Strength, Sasuke hissed. I'll show you strength. The road leading away from the hidden leaf was a winding ribbon of dust and memory. For Naruto, every mile traveled was a step deeper into a past he had already navigated. Yet the air felt different this time. It wasn't the frantic, desperate air of a boy trying to prove his worth. It was the calculated breath of a strategist moving a vital piece across the board. Jiraiya walked beside him, his massive scroll bouncing against his back with every rhythmic stride. The Toad Sage was uncharacteristically quiet, his gaze often drifting toward Naruto. He was watching the way the boy moved, not the bouncy, wasted energy of a genin, but the silent, grounded gait of a predator. You're doing it again, brat, Jiraiya said, breaking the silence as they neared a small trading town. Doing what, pervy sage? Naruto asked, though he already knew the answer. The breathing. You're circulating nature energy while we walk. Most sages need to be statues to draw that power, but you're drinking it in like it's water. Is that the wood styles doing? Naruto nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The trees are like lungs, Jiraiya-sensei. If I move in sync with them, they share their breath. Keeps the fox quiet, and it keeps my mind sharp. We're being followed, by the way. 2 hidden rain scouts. They've been with us since the border. Jiraiya's eyebrows shot up. He hadn't sensed them yet. He expanded his own sensory field and, sure enough, found 2 faint flickers of chakra nearly half a kilometer back. His range is already surpassing mine, the Sannin realized with a mix of pride and unease. Let them follow, Jiraiya grunted. They'll realize soon enough that following a Sannin and a Jinchuriki is a good way to find a grave. They found the legendary Tsunade in a bustling gambling town known for its neon lights and the smell of cheap sake. She was exactly as Naruto remembered, hauntingly beautiful thanks to her transformation jutsu. Her amber eyes hardened by decades of loss and the bitter sting of 1,000 losing streaks at the dice table. Shizen stood behind her, clutching Tonton the pig, her face a mask of perpetual worry. Jiraiya, Tsunade said, not looking up from her cards. I told you years ago, I'm done with the village. I'm done with the dying. The village is already dying, Tsunade, Jiraiya replied, taking a seat across from her. Orochimaru attacked. The old man is dead. The deck of cards in Tsunade's hands froze. A flicker of grief crossed her face, fast as a lightning strike, before she smothered it with a layer of cold indifference. The old fool should have retired decades ago. Being Hokage is a fool's errand. Only those who want to throw their lives away for a pile of stones and leaves would want the job. Naruto stepped forward. He didn't yell. He didn't flip the table. He simply stood there, his golden sage eyes meeting her amber ones. My father didn't throw his life away, Naruto said. His voice was a resonant hum, filled with the weight of the wood style's ancient vitality. He gave it so that a new generation could have a chance to even be fools. And Hiruzen Jizan didn't die for stones. He died so that I could stand here today and tell you that you're a coward. The air in the room suddenly turned heavy. The gamblers at the surrounding tables fled as Tsunade's killing intent flared, a crushing physical pressure that cracked the floorboards beneath her chair. You have a big mouth for a brat, Tsunade hissed, standing up. Do you have any idea who I am? I know exactly who you are, Naruto said, his feet rooted to the floor. He didn't flinch under her pressure. You're the greatest medical ninja in history, and you're the granddaughter of the man whose power lives in my blood. But right now, you're just a woman hiding in a bottle because you're afraid to feel the weight of a hat. Tsunade lunged. It wasn't a ninja move. It was a raw, devastating punch aimed at Naruto's head. Naruto didn't dodge. He raised his hand, his palm glowing with a deep, emerald light. With style, hand of the great forest. A thick, flexible shield of oak erupted from his palm, meeting Tsunade's fist. The impact was like a cannon blast. The table shattered, and the wall behind Naruto splintered, but the shield held. Tsunade's eyes widened as she felt her kinetic energy being absorbed and redirected into the earth. Mokuton? she breathed, her fist still pressed against the wood. How? The will of fire doesn't just burn, Tsunade-sama, Naruto said, the wood receding back into his skin. It grows, even in the ash. Tsunade stepped back, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She looked at Naruto, really looked at him, and saw the fourth Hokage's face, but with the eyes of her grandfather. 1 week, she said, her voice trembling. If you can master the technique Jiraiya is trying to teach you, the Rasengan, in 1 week, I'll consider it. But if you fail, you leave me alone forever. The training began that night. In a clearing outside the town, Naruto stood with a water balloon in his hand. Jiraiya explained the 3 stages: rotation, power, and containment. It took Minato 3 years to develop this, Jiraiya said. It's the ultimate form of shape transformation. Naruto looked at the balloon. He already knew the Rasengan, but he didn't want the standard blue sphere. He wanted to perfect it. You're going to add it, aren't you? Kurama asked. The nature energy. Yes, Naruto thought. A standard Rasengan is a blunt force weapon. A Senpo, Rasengan is a miniature star. Instead of just swirling his chakra, Naruto pulled the golden energy of the sage into his palm. He used the wood-style nodes in his hand to create a grid that held the rotation in a perfect, stable sphere. Pop. The water balloon didn't just burst. It vaporized. By the 3rd day, Naruto wasn't using rubber balls. He was holding a sphere of pure, golden-green energy that hummed with the sound of 1,000 bees. The air around him distorted from the heat of the friction. Jiraiya watched from the sidelines, his pipe forgotten in his hand. He's not just learning it, he's evolving it. He's adding a nature affinity to the shape transformation before he's even mastered the base. It's madness. But Naruto wasn't looking at Jiraiya. He was looking at his own hand. He could feel the Uzumaki chains itching beneath his skin, wanting to coil around the sphere. 1 more step, Naruto whispered. As the week drew to a close, Orochimaru appeared, his pale skin glistening in the moonlight, his arms still useless and decaying from the 3rd Hokage's soul seal. He had come to bargain for Tsunade's healing hands. Naruto stood in the clearing, the golden sage Rasengan spinning in his hand, casting a long, ethereal shadow across the grass. The snake is back, Naruto said, his voice echoing through the trees. And this time, I'm not letting you walk away. Chapter 17. The Battle of the Sannin. The air over the Tenzaka ruins was thick with the scent of sulfur and ancient stone. The landscape was a jagged graveyard of shattered masonry, the remnants of a castle that had once stood as a symbol of power, now reduced to a stage for the world's most dangerous players. In the center of the devastation, 3 legendary figures stood in a tense, triangular deadlock, but the center of the gravity had shifted to the boy standing in the eye of the storm. Orochimaru stood with his shoulders slumped, his arms hanging like dead weights at his sides. His skin was the color of a belly of a dead fish, and his eyes, those terrifying, slitted golden orbs, were fixed on Tsunade with a mixture of desperation and predatory hunger. Heal me, Tsunade, Orochimaru hissed, his voice a dry rasp that carried across the clearing. Heal these arms, and I will bring back the people you loved. Nawaki, damn, I have mastered the bridge between life and death. Their souls are mine to command. Tsunade stood trembling, her hands stained with the blood of a small scratch she had received during the initial scuffle. The sight of the crimson liquid triggered the trauma that had haunted her for decades. The memory of her lover's blood pouring through her fingers, a tide she couldn't stop. Don't listen to him, Shizen cried out, standing protectively in front of the paralyzed Sannin. Naruto stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. He didn't look at Tsunade. He looked directly at Kabuto Yakushi, who was standing beside Orochimaru, his hands glowing with the blue light of a chakra scalpel. He's lying, Tsunade-sama, Naruto said. His voice was no longer that of a boy. It was a resonant, deep tone that seemed to vibrate from the earth itself. He doesn't want to bring them back. He wants to turn their memories into puppets. My father died to protect the future, not to be a ghost in a snake's cage. The medic is moving, Naruto, Kurama's voice hummed in the back of his mind. He's fast, and he knows exactly where to cut to shut down your nervous system. Don't let him touch your wood-style nodes. I won't, Naruto thought. Kabuto blurred. He was a master of efficiency, his movements surgical and precise. He lunged at Naruto, his fingers aimed at the tenketsu in Naruto's neck. "You're a fascinating specimen, Naruto-kun. I'd love to see what's inside those lungs of yours." Naruto didn't retreat. He used the Sage-style sensory field to track the displacement of air around Kabuto's hands. As Kabuto's palm neared his throat, Naruto performed a slight, rolling pivot. Wood style, thorny embrace. Small, needle-sharp splinters of wood erupted from Naruto's shoulder, forcing Kabuto to jerk his hand back to avoid having his palm impaled. Naruto followed up with a kick that carried the weight of a falling mountain, sending Kabuto skidding 50 feet across the ruins. "Enough games," Orochimaru snarled. "Kabuto, kill the brat. I'll deal with the drunkard." The battle erupted into a cacophony of violence. Jiraiya, still somewhat drugged from a potion Tsunade had slipped him earlier, summoned Gamabunta, the massive toad boss. Orochimaru countered by biting his own thumb and using his feet to perform the summoning, bringing forth Manda, the colossal purple serpent king. The ground shook as the two titans clashed, but beneath their feet, a more intimate war was being waged. Kabuto, realizing that standard taijutsu was useless against Naruto's wood-reinforced defense, took a soldier pill. His chakra flared, becoming jagged and aggressive. He began to target Naruto's internal organs with long-distance chakra pulses. Naruto stood his ground. He held his right hand out, and the air around him began to scream. It wasn't the sound of wind. It was the sound of nature energy being compressed into a violent, spinning sphere. Senpo, Rasengan. The sphere wasn't blue. It was a brilliant, emerald green with a core of pure, golden light. It pulsed with a rhythmic thrum, like the heartbeat of the forest. Kabuto laughed, though there was a hint of sweat on his brow. "A spinning ball? I've seen the fourth's technique. It's impressive, but it won't hit what it can't catch." Kabuto moved with a speed that surpassed the human eye, zigzagging through the rubble. He appeared behind Naruto, his chakra scalpel aimed at Naruto's spine. Checkmate. Naruto didn't turn around. He didn't have to. Uzumaki sealing chains, binding anchor. A single, golden chain of pure chakra erupted from Naruto's lower back, coiling around Kabuto's ankle before the medic could land his strike. The chain slammed Kabuto into the ground, pinning him in place for just a second. That second was all Naruto needed. Naruto spun, the Sage Rasengan in his hand expanding until it was the size of a wagon wheel. He slammed the technique directly into Kabuto's chest. The impact didn't just throw Kabuto back. The nature energy within the Rasengan interacted with the wood-style spores Naruto had secretly planted on Kabuto earlier. As the Rasengan ground into Kabuto's ribs, the energy caused a massive, instantaneous growth of wooden roots inside Kabuto's chakra pathways. "Gah!" Kabuto screamed as he was sent flying through 3 stone pillars, his medical chakra failing as the wood-style roots drained his energy to feed their own growth. Tsunade watched the explosion of green light, her eyes wide. She saw Naruto, standing there, his hands smoking, his golden eyes fixed on the enemy. She saw the blood on his lip, but she also saw the unyielding life in his gaze. The trauma that had held her heart for 20 years suddenly felt small. She looked at her hands. The blood was still there, but it wasn't the blood of the dead. It was the blood of the living. "I am the 5th Hokage," Tsunade roared, her voice shattering the silence of the ruins. She bit her thumb and slammed her palm onto the ground. Summoning Jutsu, Katsuyu. The massive slug queen appeared, her presence bringing a wave of healing mist to the battlefield. Tsunade stood atop her head, her mitotic regeneration mark, the diamond on her forehead, unraveling into black lines across her face. The tide of the battle turned in a heartbeat. With Tsunade back in the fight, Manda was pinned by Gamabunta and Katsuyu. Jiraiya and Tsunade combined their efforts, forcing Orochimaru to retreat into the shadows of the forest, his body broken and his pride shattered. As the dust settled, Naruto felt the golden glow of his sage mode fade. He collapsed onto a piece of broken marble, his breathing heavy, his body aching from the sheer volume of nature energy he had channeled. Tsunade walked over to him. She didn't say a word. She reached down and flicked his forehead, the same way she used to flick Nawaki's. "You're an annoying brat," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She pulled a necklace from her neck, the first Hokage's crystal, and draped it around Naruto's neck. But I suppose a brat like you is exactly what Konoha needs. Naruto looked at the crystal, then up at the woman who would soon be the leader of his village. He gave her a small, genuine smile. Welcome home, Tsunade-bachan. You did it, Naruto, Kurama rumbled. The Sannin are united. The board is set. Not yet, Kurama, Naruto thought, looking toward the horizon where the sun was beginning to set. Sasuke is still waiting, and the moon is still watching. The return to Konoha was not the quiet affair the previous journey had been. As the gates of the Hidden Leaf loomed on the horizon, the village was already transforming. The great forest walls Naruto had manifested during the invasion had been integrated into the village's permanent defenses, their thick oak trunks now being carved with protective seals by the barrier core. Tsunade walked at the head of the group, her white haori fluttering in the wind. Beside her, Shizen carried the official scrolls of the Hokage, her face bright with a hope that hadn't been seen in the village since before the third's fall. But for Naruto, the victory in the ruins of Tenzaku felt like a brief sunlit clearing before a much darker forest. The air here is stagnant, Naruto. Kurama's voice was a low, resonant hum. The Uchiha's chakra. It's no longer a flickering flame. It's a smoldering coal, choked by the ash of his own inadequacy. He's been watching the gate for 3 days. I know, Naruto thought. He saw the wood dragon. He heard about the sage Rasengan. To Sasuke, every step I take forward feels like I'm pushing him further into the shadow of his brother. The inauguration was a grand, somber event. Standing atop the Hokage administrative building, Tsunade looked out over the sea of faces, shinobi and civilians alike, and donned the red and white hat of the 5th Hokage. The cheers were deafening, a collective release of the grief that had held the village since the Konoha crush. Naruto stood on a nearby rooftop, away from the crowds. He wasn't looking at the ceremony. He was looking at the hospital roof, where a lone figure sat with his legs dangling over the edge. Sasuke. The Uchiha's skin looked pale, almost translucent in the afternoon sun. He wasn't cheering. He was staring at his hands. Hands that had failed to stop Gaara, hands that had been useless against Itachi, and hands that now felt weak compared to the boy who used to be the dead last. Naruto hopped down, landing silently behind him. The view is better from the monument, Sasuke. Sasuke didn't turn around. Why are you here, Naruto? Tsunade-bachan is officially the boss now. She's going to start the recovery efforts. We're going to be busy. We. Sasuke spat the word, finally turning his head. His Sharingan was active, the two tomo spinning with a manic intensity. There is no we. There's you, the hero of the village, the one with the legendary wood style, the one the Sannin fight over. And then there's me, a failure who can't even protect his own pride. Pride is a heavy thing to carry alone. Sasuke? Naruto said, his voice dropping the idiot mask completely. He stepped closer, his golden sage eyes meeting the crimson of the Sharingan. Itachi wants you to be filled with hatred because hatred is easy to control. If you want real strength, you have to look past the revenge. Don't you dare speak his name, Sasuke roared, leaping to his feet. He lunged, his hand crackling with the blue electricity of the Chidori. Naruto didn't draw a kunai. He didn't even raise his hands into a defensive stance. He used the sage style to sense the flow of the lightning. At the last microsecond, he pivoted, the Chidori whistling past his ear, and grabbed Sasuke's wrist. The contact was like ice hitting fire. Naruto sent a pulse of calming with style energy through Sasuke's arm, momentarily short-circuiting the lightning. Go home, Sasuke, Naruto said, his voice filled with a weary compassion. Sleep, we have a mission tomorrow. Sasuke wrenched his arm away, his chest heaving. He didn't say another word. He vanished in a flicker of movement, leaving Naruto alone on the roof. That night, the shadows of Konoha moved with a purpose that had nothing to do with the village's safety. Four figures sat perched on the perimeter fence of the Uchiha compound. They wore the gray tunics and heavy ropes of the hidden sound, the Sound Four: Kidamaru, Sakan/Yukon, Tayuya, and Jirobo. They had been sent by Orochimaru with a single task: retrieve the vessel. Inside the compound, Sasuke sat in the darkness of his ancestral home. The silence was deafening. Every corner of the room seemed to echo with the screams of his parents and the cold, clinical voice of his brother telling him he was weak. You lack hatred. The window creaked open. You look like you're having a bad night, Tayuya sneered, her flute held loosely in her hand. Sasuke didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't even look surprised. Who are you? We're an invitation, Sakan replied, stepping into the moonlight. Our master, Orochimaru, has seen your potential. He knows the village is a cage for someone like you. They fear your eyes. They hold you back while the foxboy grows stronger. Stay here, and you'll always be his shadow. Come with us, and you'll have the power to kill anyone you wish. Sasuke looked at the black marks of the cursed seal on his arm. It was pulsing, a dark heartbeat that seemed to synchronize with his own. Why should I trust a snake? Sasuke asked. Because the snake is the only one who won't lie to you about the cost of power, Tayuya said. Konoha gives you friendship and will of fire. Orochimaru gives you the world. Sasuke stood up. He looked at the framed picture of Team 7 sitting on his desk, the one where Naruto was yelling and Sakura was blushing. He reached out and turned the picture face down. Let's go, Sasuke whispered. The alarm was raised at dawn. Sakura had found Sasuke at the village gates, and her heart-wrenching pleas had fallen on deaf ears. She had been left unconscious on a stone bench, and by the time she was found, the Uchiha was gone. Naruto stood in the Hokage's office, the atmosphere thick with tension. Tsunade sat behind the desk, her expression grim. Shikamaru Nara stood beside Naruto, having just been promoted to Chunin, the only one of their year to earn the rank. The mission is a retrieval, Tsunade said, her voice like iron. Sasuke Uchiha has defected. We have reports of 4 Sound Ninja escorting him toward the border of the Land of Sound. Shikamaru, you are the squad leader. Naruto, you are the powerhouse. Pick your team and move out. Every second you waste is a second closer to Orochimaru getting his hands on that boy's body. Naruto looked at Shikamaru. He knew the original retrieval team, Choji, Niji, Kiba. He knew the injuries they would sustain. He knew the near-death experiences. I'm picking the team, Shikamaru, Naruto said. Normally I'd argue, Shikamaru sighed, his brain already running through 100 tactical permutations. But I have a feeling you've already decided. Who? Niji, Naruto said. We need his Byakugan to track the traps. Lee Tsunade-bachan, you've healed his legs, he needs to prove he's back. And Hinata. Shikamaru blinked. Hinata? Why? Because the Sound 4 use specialized barriers and long-range projectiles, Naruto said. Hinata's new nature-enhanced Byakugan can see the thread of a jutsu before it's even cast. And because... Naruto's voice softened. Because she deserves to be there when we bring him home. It's a dangerous team, Tsunade noted, but a balanced one. Go. And Naruto. She looked him in the eye. Bring them all back. Alive. Naruto nodded. He walked to the window and looked toward the horizon. He could feel the jagged, dark chakra of the cursed seal moving away. He's chosen the dark, Naruto, Kurama said. He's looking for the shortcut. Then I'll just have to show him that there are no shortcuts when you're running from yourself, Naruto thought. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a single, 3-pronged kunai. He hadn't told anyone yet, but he had successfully anchored a Hiraition mark to Sasuke's clothing during their brief encounter on the hospital roof. He could end this in a second, jump to Sasuke and bring him back. But he didn't. If I just pull him back now, he'll just run again, Naruto realized. He needs to see the end of the road he's choosing. He needs the valley of the end. Let's go, Naruto shouted to his team. We have a brother to save. Chapter 19. The Chase in the Forest. The canopy of the Land of Fire's ancient forest sped by in a blur of deep greens and shadowed browns. The Sasuke retrieval squad moved with a desperate, synchronized speed, leaping across massive branches with the rhythmic thud of sandals against bark. At the front, Shikamaru Nara maintained a constant tally of their environment, his mind a chessboard of terrain and timing. Behind him, Niji Hyuga kept his Byakugan active, his veins bulging as he scanned the horizon for the jagged, purple chakra signatures of the Sound 4. Naruto maintained the rear, his breathing steady. He was no longer the boy who had panicked during the wave mission. He was the anchor. He felt the emerald hum of the wood style reacting to the surrounding trees, feeding him a constant stream of sensory data. They've stopped, Naruto, Kurama's voice vibrated through the seal. They've laid a trap, a specialized barrier meant to siphon chakra. The spider boy is waiting in the rafters. I see them, Naruto thought. Shikamaru, halt. The team skidded to a stop on a massive oak branch. Seconds later, a rain of golden, hardened webbing whistled through the air. Niji reacted instantly, his palms a blur. 8 trigrams. Palm revolving heaven. The spinning dome of chakra deflected the webbing, which hit the surrounding trees with the force of iron. From the shadows above, Kadamaru descended, his 6 arms gripping the bark, a sadistic grin stretching across his face. Not bad for a bunch of leaf brats, the sound ninja hissed. But you've walked right into my web. Jirobo is already dealing with your slow-footed friend. I'll take the rest of you. Shikamaru, keep moving, Naruto commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. Niji, he's yours. You're the only one who can see the threads of his gold. Niji nodded, his gaze locked on Kadamaru. I will not fail. Go, Naruto-sama. The team split. As Naruto, Hinata, and Lee lunged forward, Kadamaru tried to intercept them with a barrage of webbing. But Niji's gentle fist sliced through the chakra-infused silk like a hot knife through butter. The twin shadows, Hinata and Lee. 2 kilometers further, the forest opened into a rocky ravine. Standing in the center of the path were Sakan and Yukon, the dual-bodied brothers who served as Orochimaru's primary muscle. 2 more pests, Sakan sneered, his head tilting at an unnatural angle. A cripple and a girl. This is pathetic. Rock Lee stepped forward, the weights on his ankles clicking as he shifted his stance. He had only recently been cleared by Tsunade's surgery, and his aura was a raging fire of youth and gratitude. I may be a cripple in your eyes, but I am the handsome devil of the hidden leaf, and I am here to protect my friend's path. Hinata stepped up beside him. She didn't look like the girl who stuttered in the academy. Her hands were held in a low, predatory stance, and a faint, blue-green mist of nature energy swirled around her fingertips. Naruto-kun, go, Hinata said, her voice soft but absolute. We will hold them here. Be careful, Hinata, Naruto said, pausing for a brief second. Sakan's cells confuse with yours. Don't let him touch your core. Use the nature perception I taught you. I will, she replied, her Byakugan flaring. Naruto and Shikamaru vanished into the trees, leaving the ravine to the sound of Lee opening the first gate. The air shattered as Lee moved, a green blur of speed, while Hinata moved with the fluidity of water, her strikes no longer aimed at just the body, but at the very air Sakan breathed. The forest of despair. Now it was just Naruto and Shikamaru. They were nearing the border. The air began to smell of sulfur and ancient rot, the scent of the land of sound. Suddenly, a haunting, mournful melody drifted through the trees. Shikamaru stumbled, his eyes glazing over as Tayuya's phantom sound chains began to wrap around his mind. A genjutsu, Shikamaru groaned, dropping to one knee. My shadow, it's not listening. Tayuya emerged from the brush, her flute held to her lips. Dumbass, you should have stayed in the village and played shogi. Now you're going to rot in this forest. Naruto didn't hesitate. He performed a single-handed seal, slamming his palm into Shikamaru's back. He didn't just disrupt the chakra. He flooded Shikamaru's system with a burst of wood-style vitality, a raw, grounding energy that the sound-based genjutsu couldn't penetrate. Shikamaru gasped, his eyes clearing. That felt like being hit by a forest. Finish her, Shikamaru, Naruto said, his golden sage eyes scanning the distance. I can feel him. He's at the valley of the end. He stopped moving. Go, Shikamaru said, his shadow already snaking toward Tayuya. I'll catch up. And Naruto, don't let him go. The village needs that idiot. The final step. Naruto blurred. He stopped holding back his speed, the sage mode drinking in the nature energy of the borderlands to fuel his sprint. Every step he took left a crater in the bark. He burst through the final tree line, and the world opened up. The Valley of the End. 2 massive statues of Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha stood as silent sentinels over a roaring waterfall. The spray of the water created a constant, shimmering rainbow in the afternoon sun. Standing atop the head of Madara Uchiha was a boy in a high-collared blue shirt. Sasuke. He was different. The cursed seal had matured, turning his skin a dark, bruised gray. His hair was longer, and a strange, star-shaped mark was etched across the bridge of his nose. He looked like a demon masquerading as a boy. Naruto landed on the head of Hashirama Senju. The two statues faced each other, just as their namesakes had decades ago. "You're late, Naruto," Sasuke said. His voice was different, deeper, colder, and filled with a resonance that made the water below ripple. "I was wondering if you'd have the guts to show up alone." "I'm not alone, Sasuke," Naruto said, his orange jacket fluttering in the wind. He touched the crystal necklace Tsunade had given him. "I have the hopes of the whole village on my back. And I have the memory of a team that actually cared about you." "Team 7 is dead," Sasuke sneered. He turned, the Sharingan in his eyes spinning with 3 Tomo now, the final evolution. "I've seen the end of the road, Naruto. I've seen the power Orochimaru offers. It's better than your friendship. It's better than your will of fire. It's the power to kill him." "And what happens after that, Sasuke?" Naruto asked, stepping to the edge of the statue. "Once you've killed Itachi, what's left of the boy who wanted to be a police officer? What's left of the boy who protected Sakura in the forest?" "Nothing," Sasuke screamed, the dark chakra of the cursed seal erupting from him in a violent, purple aura. "There is nothing left but the Uchiha. And you're the last bond one have to break." Sasuke lunged, his hand crackling with a Chidori that had turned to pitch black, fueled by the darkness of the seal. Naruto didn't use a Rasengan. He didn't use the wood dragon. He reached into his heart and pulled out the golden energy of the sage, mixing it with the raw, red heat of Kurama for the first time in this life. "If you want to break the bond, Sasuke," Naruto roared, his voice sounding like a choir of lions, "then you're going to have to break the world to do it." The two rivals collided in mid-air over the center of the waterfall, the clash of black lightning and golden light shattering the very air between them.